When it comes to fitness, we've always looked for the new way, new trend that will make us feel, look, and live better. We're pulled to workouts that ironically don't look like a lot of work.
People want to go up to the gym and have fun, and I take this formula and amazing music.
We also bought into workouts that clearly don't work.
A dumbbell that you like shook.
I can't stop giggling.
Or the Thigh Master, right? There's so many fads that like were flops.
And today, we pay to be pushed to our limits.
HIIT training is quick, it's fast, it fits into their lifestyle.
Our need to sweat up a storm fuels an almost $97 billion fitness industry. And the businesses that are coming out on top are the ones who can give us results better and faster. This is the fitness frenzy that's taking over the world. It now boasts more than 1,700 studios globally in just over a decade.
It's pretty hard to grow any faster than we've grown.
This is Rob Deutsch, founder of global fitness community F45.
For many years, I was working in finance and I thought about launching something like F45 and I deliberated and deliberated. And when I finally made the decision to go out and do it, I was the happiest person on earth. I wanted to create something that was fun, energetic, with super innovative workouts where clients could literally come, make friends, and feel part of the community.
I would say if there's one word to sum up F45, I think it's probably comprehensive.
This is David Levesley, a fitness and culture journalist who's tried out and written about every possible workout there is.
I don't have to think about going to a gym, going to other classes. I get my cardio and my strength. If you come enough times a week and you are devoted enough to it, you will be fitter.
F45 is today's greatest HIIT franchise, otherwise known as high-intensity interval training. It's made up of uncompromising, strenuous bursts of physical activity. The silver lining? It's over in 45 minutes. Fitness professionals have voted it one of the top regimens 7 years in a row. And it contributes to a global health and fitness industry that sees 184 million members and nearly 210,000 facilities worldwide. In Asia, South Korea holds the record for the largest number of gyms. China takes the lead with the highest number of members. Singapore, one of the smallest countries in the world, ranks top globally in annual revenue generated per member. There's clearly a demand to hit it hard at the gym. But why is it that we love to work out?
I just like to move around and sweat out.
Working out gives your body a sense of endorphin.
I feel strong and it's like a reboot for my brain.
Having that routine, I feel like it really sets you up for a good day.
I don't work out, but look at these babies now, I'm just joking.
Love it or hate it, we all know that working out is essential to our health. And it's not surprising that this dates back to the dawn of man. But let's go forward to a time we can actually relate to. The Roaring 20s. People cared more for festivities over fitness, and the vibrating belt was the rage. The 1930s. The Women's League of Health and Beauty got women doing leg lifts, star jumps, and toe touches en masse.
You can easily persuade your husband or brother to catch the ball while he's shaving.
Women's fitness has always been tied to beauty standards.
This is Professor Katie Rose Haymanek, cultural anthropologist, author, and Olympic weightlifter.
In the 1950s and 60s, women weren't necessarily out of the house working like men were. It's about, are you slim still for your husband? With industrial capitalism, suburb proliferation, people started having also convenient appliances.
This setup makes any day wash day for me. Couldn't be easier.
And so that kind of came through the television.
The golden age of the telly gave rise to this man, the godfather of modern fitness.
I'm going to show you how you can firm up your bust line, how you can take down your waist and firm up your hips, how you can get rid of those ugly pounds, all of these things from me to you.
Jack LaLanne brought workouts to American homes for the first time.
So muscles became very in style in the 80s and 90s. Terminator movies and Rambo movies and all these movies where the protagonist was sort of this giant man with all these muscles. And we also have the fitness queen,
Jane Fonda, step aerobics goddess, who made aerobic wear on Vogue.
They have this image that is like, this is what fitness looks like. Well, how do I look like that? Well, I buy Arnold Schwarzenegger's book. I buy Jane Fonda's VHSs so that I can also build a body that looks like that.
Propelled by pop culture, aerobics naturally became a worldwide fitness craze. It was so popular that Singapore in 1993 launched a national aerobics fitness routine called the Great Singapore Workout.
Singapore, Singapore, workout time. Okay. This is a special announcement.
And it was aerobics that set the stage for the next workout trend. Dancing your way to fitness.
He wanted to call it Wumba, but it sounded like pregnancy workout.
Alberto say Zumba.
We all loved it immediately.
These are the co-founders of Zumba, one of the biggest fitness trends in modern memory. And they all happen to be called Alberto. The first Alberto, or Beto, is the creative genius who invented Zumba.
It was an accident. One day, I come to the gym and I forgot my music. And the only music that I had with me was a cassette, but different kind of music. Latin, salsa, cumbia, reggaeton. Inside to me, I was shaking my legs because I know I need to improvise for 1 hour. Thanks to this accident, I create Zumba.
Enter Alberto number 2.
I was at a family dinner and every single female in that room was speaking about Beto's class. My mom said, I'll introduce you to Beto's. I went to the class. Every single person in the class was smiling. Every single person. And that was really what impressed me.
Now we are 20 years together and it's the best decision I take in my life.
Alberto Aguillon makes up the final founding member.
I thought it's risky, but I immediately connected with it and I understood the potential immediately. It's the time. It was 2001. Ricky Martin was singing Living La Vida Loca at the Grammys. Latin music was crossing over.
J-Lo, Marc Anthony, Enrique Iglesias won the hearts of Americans, and Zumba wanted to be part of this crossover story.
So it was obviously, how do we get the money and how do we get started?
The first tape we ever did was to show it to potential investors.
But not one investor caught the dance bug.
The fitness industry laughed at us. Oh, you guys don't know what the industry is. You're Latin, you dance, it's a joke. What's the business there? But we knew there was something. There was lines of people trying to go to the Zumba class, so we said there has to be a way to scale this.
I always loved staying up late and watching what people sold on television. Well, I remember there was an infomercial called Taibo, and it was kickboxing tapes that were being sold on TV. In that time, the only way to go direct to the consumer was via television.
Their persistence paid off thanks to the late-night television delights of the early 2000s.
Butt, hips, and calves. OxyClean, the stain specialist.
Infomercials grew into a business behemoth, growing into a $300 billion industry by 2009.
I'm mixing all the ingredients together. You've got a beautiful homemade pasta sauce.
It was an even bigger market than television itself. Next to magic potions to cure baldness and zany inventions like the Slicer Cum Dicer, Zumba workout DVDs made their debut.
You're guaranteed to lose a full dress or pant size in your first 10 days or your money back.
The infomercial was a big deal. I was traumatized 3 months before we shooting the video because I need to speak English. And every day for 2 hours I went to learn and to try to memorize all these words. And it looked like I speak very good English, but I don't know really what I say in this time. Merengue, salsa, many rhythms in one class.
So with infomercials, it was a pipeline into the living room.
Kenneth Goh is an educator in strategic management at the Singapore Management University.
If you want to reach across the United States, infomercials was one of the best way to do so. Now that said, it's limited. For a small company, they have to work through the direct TV marketers. And these will be the people who are making the bulk of the money. Will they make a lot of money? Maybe not.
Despite having good sales numbers through infomercials, Zumba only received a small portion in royalties from their direct TV marketer. The trio found themselves with little in the bank by the end of 2003.
I was always looking for other opportunities. If it doesn't work, we're going to go into a medical billing. And when I told Perlman that, he freaked out and he said, no way.
I remember this day, Alberto's both, they tell me, you know what, Beto, I think this is it. And I feel like I will be alone. I say, I don't want. In this moment, coming a company, Kellogg's.
To the rescue, Tony the Tiger in 2003. The company wanted an effective way to bring their cereals to the Latin market. The strategy, to put a Zumba DVD in every cereal box as part of a health and fitness campaign.
Tony the Tiger is like a superhero. He needs to be dynamic, very cool. And I say, you know what, guys, give me this custom. And the CEO said, I want to do 3 more projects.
Kept us going for a couple years.
Yeah.
Every time there was something that saved Zumba. Every time. It was inevitable.
From 2004 to 2007, over 3 million DVDs were redeemed or sold in this partnership that resulted in record-breaking sales. Their popularity surged alongside the entire fitness industry. Close to 33 million Americans signed up to fitness in the year 2000. This increased by 52% to 50 million a decade later. Fast forward to the 2010s. The fitness scene was defined by the likes of the fitness influencer, wearable technology, diet tribes like keto, vegan, paleo, the list goes on, and the IT trend that still persists till today. High-intensity interval training, or HIIT.
Got into F45 pretty early on in Singapore, 5 years ago.
This is Mel Cassidy, fitness trainer and business owner of 3 F45 studios in Singapore.
There are various studies to show that HIIT training is effective, in as little as 30 minutes. They're looking for cost-effective, dynamic, and also results-driven workouts.
The F in F45 stands for functional workouts. It's a type of strength training that readies your body for day-to-day activities. Pricier than a gym, but cheaper than hiring a personal trainer, F45 sits at a $45 a week fee and promises PT-like results. This workout was founded in 2013 by former equities trader Rob Deutsch and personal trainer Luke Istomin.
One thing that I really realised was normal commercial gyms where people arrive with their earphones on, with no community basis, where they don't make friends and they don't get an experience from their workouts, was really dying. And the average attendance around the world for normal commercial gyms is once a month. So I found that there was a fundamental flaw in gymnasium businesses where people were signing up for their memberships and not arriving.
There's a research on how people relate in gyms, and it was mostly about politeness and about greeting people, but you didn't build any kinds of friendships. F45 sort of tap into this new branding market. We're going to tap into the social media organizing, and we're going to tap into this desire to do high-intensity training. And we're just going to build this community based on this brand.
And F45 needed that competitive advantage. There was the CrossFit cult already dominating the market. Stationary biking that got everyone spinning. And since fitness fads have a way of coming and going, F45 needed to build a concept that would stick. Modern life has a way of making us feel time-crunched and pressured. Our hectic schedules call for a time-efficient way to burn calories. and high-intensity interval training hits our spot. A yearly survey conducted by the American College of Sports Medicine has seen HIIT remain in the top 5 for the past 7 years.
We like this idea of if we're doing an exercise, that means scientifically that I'm burning more calories, and there's sort of an element of redemption and sacrifice. I have to suffer for it to be working. If I'm not suffering, it's not working. And that sort of taps into like elite sports ideologies.
And we all aspire to the athleticism of the pros, which is what makes HIIT so attractive, even back in the 1900s. The interval training system was used to help Olympic runners improve strength and stamina through bursts of short sprints. It helped this Finnish man, Paavo Nurmi, bag 22 world records and 9 Olympic golds. And since then, world-renowned fitness regimens like F45 have people hooked on the workout en masse.
Clients that burn, upwards of 700 calories in 45 minutes. So you don't need any longer than that. You've just got to be smart the way you train, and you shouldn't need any longer than 45 minutes.
It's quick, it's fast, it fits into their lifestyle. Air-conditioned space, variety, tech. It was trendy. They love a good trend. It was very Instagrammable. They love that. It's got a great presence on social media.
So I think there was a huge transformation in the late 2000s. First of all, we have smartphones. And with that proliferation of social media, people started to think of themselves as brands. You're buying into one particular kind of strategy that you think is going to make you fit and make you look good.
This is what F45 members buy into. It's a studio space with no frills, but heavily optimized. When a member walks into a studio, the trainers literally click the screens on, and the session runs for only 45 minutes. All exercises are pre-loaded, sent out from HQ to every single studio around the world.
Lionheart, heart rate monitors, helps the trainers be able to know when to push, when to not push so hard if they're already at their maximum heart rate. It also sends a member a report directly after the workout.
Now, if you look at your typical gyms, when you see the TV monitors, it's to entice them to sign up because of such a wonderful experience that they're going to get by coming to the gym. So F45 flips that on its head as well by using the TV monitors as feedback for how hard you're working.
F45 is tapping on our need to know more of ourselves through numbers.
We're enumerating and auditing ourselves through numbers to tabulate, how fit we are. And this is sort of like quasi-science culture. Fitness practices really like to kind of talk about it as empirical or as science-based, but really what it is it makes them feel like, oh, this is more quantifiable, therefore it's more meaningful.
And while personalization is important, there's another factor that F45 knew it had to cultivate.
Jenny, high five. Excellent.
When you have a strong community, that retains members. We host events like Christmas parties, go for a walk on the green corridor, things that aren't actually specifically an F45 class, but they are community bonding type events.
These sort of secular spaces provided some of the sort of community that religion and religious institutions had already provided, for centuries. It's like a space to be yourself and find your friends.
F45 fueled the growth of their community through the launch of an 8-week challenge.
And I have done maybe 7 challenges. The right way to ever inspire anybody to keep going is progress pictures or real world objective games, like dropping a jean size, dropping a dress size. But the way that they make you reframe looking at progress as looking at progress pictures instead of looking at the scales is actually one of the many ways that they have improved my relationship with exercise fundamentally.
Instagram and Facebook became the fitness buddy holding you accountable. And if you didn't track it or share it online, it's like Intuit never happened. But dial it back to a time where social media didn't exist. How did fitness trends build community? This was what Zumba in 2003 needed to figure out. Fans were flocking to get physical with Zumba. Zumba DVDs hit record-breaking sales. But this level of response isn't surprising. We've seen it with shake weights, with thigh buster, and before you know it, it becomes a fad. Zumba needed to break this cycle.
For many years, whenever we attended fitness trade shows, there was always something new. And someone would come up to us and said, this is the last year of Zumba, you know, this is it, like Zumba's done. I mean, everybody already did it. We decided that we needed to have a sustainable, a recurring business model. And we started trying to come up with the idea of how do you train people to deliver a Zumba experience? And we decided, without knowing anything about fitness education, that we were going to write a manual of how to teach Zumba. And then we held our first instructor training.
We went for 20, 30 people, and it's coming like 120 people.
They came from all over the country.
In just 2 years, Beto had trained roughly 700 Zumba instructors, who then went on to hold their own classes around the world.
We decided that we needed to have a sustainable sort of relationship with them that was longer term and provide them with everything they need to be successful. And that's where we came up with the Zumba Instructor Network in 2005.
This is the crystallized business model that would give Zumba the scale it needed. Turn instructors into entrepreneurs to power the brand forward. In 2006, the Zumba Instructor Network, or ZIN, was created. Hopeful trainers would pay a low monthly membership fee and be provided with a certification course and marketing and class materials, like music and new choreography. All the sweat they poured into their business, the profits were theirs to keep.
So the instructors are everything to us. They are the ones who carry the Zumba message. We wanted instructors to be free. It's like open source software. So if an instructor wanted to teach free Zumba classes in the jungle of Chiang Mai, who are we to stop them? We don't even want to call it a company, it's a movement.
Armed with a profitable business model and a rapidly growing army of certified ambassadors, Zumba was ready for the global stage. "2010, the year that brought us the first iPad, Uber, One Direction, and Zumba hits fever pitch in America. The dance movement's network of instructors grew by 4,000% from 2007 to 2010 across the United States. And the Zumba party wasn't stopping there.
One person from another country came to one of our instructor trainings and said, oh, this would be huge in Italy. Why don't you bring it to Italy? Beto flew to Italy, and we started training instructors in Italy, and that's how it happened. And one thing led to the other, and we started expanding across Europe.
I was the only one that make the trainings, but it was so hard for me because I teach 22 classes per week. I didn't stop. The most hard moment for my ego was when Alberto told me, Beto, we need to find a person help you to teach other instructor, but I need to trust them. Everybody have your own country, your territory. They need to work in your own language. It was the only way to grow. I need to accept it.
It was only a matter of time before Zumba would come to Asia's shores. And it was going to take more than just zealous instructors for Zumba to find its feet in this market.
There are so many different languages in Asia, and we didn't know how we were going to get all the information across. But one of the beautiful things of Zumba is that in a Zumba class, nobody speaks.
It's very important that people hear the music and feel the music. I don't know, it's magic. When I teach my classes, I feel connected with everybody there.
Zumba didn't rely on just Beto's well-choreographed visual cueing system. In order to get the party started offshore, They diversified. They adapted their music to cater to local tastes. And Beto was Zumba's guru on the ground.
Philippines are crazy. They are like a Latinos from there. I was in Beijing, a lot of young people. The stage is like a concert with lights and everything. Whereas I was in Japan, everybody synchronized. So I want to cry. 12,000 people singing and singing in Spanish. I have amazing memories. I remember like 5 countries in 12 days.
In 2017 alone, Beto traveled to 30 countries, spanning from Russia to Japan, leading thousands in concert-like master dance classes.
I need to sleep in the plane to Beijing to Malaysia, I think. When I landing, I need to directly to the gym to teach a training. 200 instructors waiting for me, conference, TV, all these things, happy face. And I say, oof, I'm so tired. But it was an amazing experience because it was my first time. I love the culture of the different countries in Asia. I love it.
Aquí estamos haciendo desorden en Japón, que todo es ordenado. Dos venezolanos, dos colombianos haciendo este desorden y otro colombiano allá detrás.
Today, Zumba has over 200 Zumba education specialists around the world, training new instructors every week.
No other fitness brand in the world reaches 15 million people. We're in 200,000 locations. That's more than McDonald's, Starbucks, and Dunkin' Donuts combined.
Zumba was on its way to becoming a global fitness empire. But as their popularity grew, so did a large problem: piracy.
We couldn't stop it. So what we decided to do was, in our new set of DVDs, we put messages that said, go find a Zumba class, go find a live Zumba class. We won't make money on those DVDs, but we will help all our instructors get their classes full. But we've also had to deal with instructor piracy in many, many different countries. And usually with a strong letter from a lawyer to the gym, that instructor either leaves or becomes legally trained in Zumba.
Zumba is constantly plagued with lawsuits. Worse, it looked like Zumba was peaking. It fell out of the top 20 worldwide fitness trends in 2014. And by 2017, Zumba fell to number 39 and remained there in 2018. Right at the thick of it all, a titanic shift in fitness was happening. Work increasingly became more fast-paced. The working adult time poor.
Because it's not worth doing if you're not going a lot, like financially and fitness-wise, so you need somewhere that's near to you. In London, in particular, F45 is franchised quite quickly. I live in South London, and there's probably 7 different South London F45s. So you could do a lot of trials. You could do a lot of trials at those for not much money.
F45's model makes it ripe for franchising. Free from the shackles of lockers, showers, and elaborate equipment, setup and labor costs are lower. One franchise would sell at about $35,500 a pop. Franchisees then have to purchase around $71,000 of equipment and pay a $1,000 monthly membership fee.
It's a lot easier for you to break even, for the entrepreneur to make money. The average F45 gym has about 175 members, and on the average, they only need 75 members to break even. So the additional 100 members, that's pure profit that goes to the gym owners.
Fitness brands illustrate the McDonaldization of society. And it's this way of providing a brand, and then within that brand, you always know what you're going to get. The menu's the same, no matter where you go. So you kind of create this community that's not just about your local gym, but about sort of this international brand.
Within 2 years, F45 grew from 15 studios to 500 studios in Australia and 750 around the world. According to Fast Company, it was dubbed one of the fastest growing fitness franchises in the world. Hollywood celebrity Mark Wahlberg, among other investors, pumped the fitness chain with investments to fuel expansion.
So it's pretty hard to grow any faster than we've grown, but I don't think we ever imagined it would take off the way that it has. We obviously had grand plans to take this globally, but to be in 33 different countries and have sold 1,000 franchises in 4 years, we never could have dreamed of that.
Besides the cash injection, another key to F45's rapid expansion is its workout algorithm and patented, technology-enabled delivery platform. The fitness programming algorithm shuffles through a playlist of 3,900 training movements, all displayed on televisions around the studio. One could go to F45 for years and never do the same workout twice.
The TVs were probably the first of its kind. Every day, we have a different workout appearing on the screen. So you plug the dongle into the back of the TV, and then from HQ, they are able to send the programming for each day to each specific studio around the world. So every F45 studio in the world will run the same program on the same day. Prior to F45, when I was running boot camps, I would spend 15 to 20 hours a week programming workouts. It was time consuming. So this takes that aspect out of it for the franchisee.
You aren't going to be doing that workout again in the exact same way, but you still have enough consistency and enough of a internal language that you can kind of know and get familiar with it as well.
The near 4,000 exercises in F45's toolkit were performed by trainer Corey George over a 2.5-month period in an LA warehouse. According to Deutsch, the algorithm shuffling through these moves is far smarter than any human and builds better workouts. And it took them 2 to 3 years with 6 trainers and a scientist to build.
The beauty about the F45 algorithm is that it relies on your data, and that's your history with F45 to generate that novelty. And so that algorithm plays a very critical role in helping to retain customers.
But this tech novelty doesn't exempt fitness trends from losing customers. Right next to F45's meteoric rise was a growing pain: training-related injuries. This is part of a wider concern of how high-intensity training could hit us where it hurts. There were nearly 4 million injuries related to HIIT equipment and workouts over a 9-year period between 2007 to 2016.
With the competitiveness of the workout, you're seeing a little bit more of an increase in injury because people are pushing themselves oftentimes beyond what their bodies are capable of. They have a movement and consistency that gets exacerbated by the thing that they're doing. People fall off because of injury.
CrossFit, a once high-flying HIIT regiment, started falling out from favor after multiple studies cautioned of the injury-prone workout. According to a study done by the Orthopedic Journal of Sports Medicine, 30% of CrossFitters surveyed experienced an injury over the past year. Those with higher physical pursuits incurred more.
F45 has both exacerbated my bad relationship with exercise and has also improved my relationship with exercise immeasurably. There are definitely injuries in exercise because the more we keep thinking we have to lift heavier and do harder things and push ourselves to athletic proportions, the more we are not recovering to athletic proportions either. But I do think that all exercise spaces need to think more about pastoral care for the people who go there.
Despite the risks, demand for these techniques remained strong. F45's aggressive expansion plans were undeterred, entering 45 markets with 1,750 franchises by 2020.
By having these videos that are an effectively wordless guide to a workout that just uses the visuals of working out, anybody anywhere in the world can follow that instruction without needing to know the particular parlance of how people work out there, without having to know how to describe a hang clean in in Chinese. It's all, you could just do it you could do it anywhere.
Asia is certainly a market players in the fitness industry want to crack. According to the Global Wellness Institute, Asia's physical activity market is worth $240 billion and will overtake North America by 2023. Why? It lies with the middle class.
At the ends of World War II, there was sort of a mass movement of of middle-class jobs. People were sitting more during work rather than having labor jobs. The automobile was proliferating. People were all of a sudden more sedentary. And as soon as that happened, there was a need for some sort of healthy activity outside of the work. There's proliferation of all kinds of fitness trends due to the burgeoning of the middle class. And so fitness has just become this multi-billion-dollar industry. With the numbers of people that Asia has and the increase in income and expansion of a middle class, I don't think there's anything stopping Asia from taking over as a fitness giant.
The market has definitely become more and more saturated. With F45s, I mean, we've gone from, at the time when I launched, 6 studios on the island to now there would be over 45 studios in Singapore.
There is hardly an excuse not to exercise in Singapore. According to Run Repeat, there are over 200 gyms in Singapore to date, boasting 320,000 members. With so many gyms and so little time, HIIT seems to be the holy grail of exercise today. There's HIIT on trampolines, HIIT on floats, HIIT that wants you out in 30 minutes. This time-saving workout has got fitness players like Zumba thinking if they too should get with the times. If you bought into fitness back in 2014, you'd be sporting some sort of wearable, leggings, yoga mat, tagging things like #Beast Mode or #Leg Day or Fitspiration. And the movers and shakers were into HIIT or high-intensity interval training.
40 seconds on and 20 seconds off.
Beto and I were walking through a trade show, and we saw a class that said, HIIT to music. And Beto and I went in there, and we took the class. And Beto kept telling me during the class, "You're doing it wrong. They're doing it wrong."
I say, man, I had this idea. Batman, the TV series in the 70s, when Batman punch and the letters coming to the screen, pow, boom, pow, splash, something like that, but with music.
The Albetos found a gap that could set their HIIT repertoire apart from the rest. They decided to give HIIT a makeover, and it has nothing to do with dance or Latin music. Zumba launched Strong Nation in 2016, where high-intensity movements are synced with music.
We decided to reverse engineer the music. So first we create the moves, and then we give those moves, that video, to a DJ, a music producer, and we tell them, please score the music to the workout.
And this is the first song that we created with Timbaland for Strong by Zumba.
Zumba zoned in on creating their own workout music genre. Strong Nation launched alongside music partnerships with hit-making producers like Timbaland and Steve Aoki. And while Zumba is known for its moves, music has been one of the company's core business.
So weight loss and fitness was the business we thought we were getting into. Then we realized it was entertainment, and we created the Zumba Music Lab to produce our own music and work with famous artists to co-produce. So we have artists like J-Lo, Black Eyed Peas, Daddy Yankee, Shakira, and they all want to launch their music to the Zumba community because they know not only do we reach 15 million people, we reach 15 million people in 186 countries.
Zumba is better than a radio station.
You are creating synergies between the music and the movement, and you're riding on the brands of well-known personalities in the music industry. It provides the corporate entity with a little more diversification So they're not just reliant on the income stream or the cash flows from the local entrepreneurs.
Over the past 10 years, Zumba has grown into a music empire. It has an in-house team of 10 producers and songwriters and has produced at least 10 top charting songs. And their new foray into sync-to-music sessions is working. Less than 2 years after Strong Nation launched, about 400,000 people are moving to music in more than 18,000 classes weekly. Strong Nation is growing faster than Zumba did in its first few years. But just as Zumba was going strong, a global pandemic brought the entire fitness industry to its knees. Gyms bore the weight of it. Fitness centers became COVID hotspots, resulting in temporary shutdowns.
I felt the lack of the endorphins, I felt the lack of the structure, I felt the lack of feeling like I was doing enough. I think for a lot of people, they did have to become their own PTs over lockdown.
Remember how home fitness arrived in the 50s? Then hit a peak in the 70s with step aerobics? Well, the pandemic brought fitness back home again. The global at-home fitness market is expected to be worth $9.5 billion by 2021, a 40% increase from 2019. For brick-and-mortar studios like F45, it was a sink or swim scenario. Franchisees like Mel were forced to shutter studios for months. As a result, 2020 saw F45 incur an 11% decline in revenue, with its losses doubling. Several other corporate chains suffered a harsher fate, filing for bankruptcy protection or closure.
It's been devastating. Within 48 hours, we had to pivot the business from being fully operational, conducting classes with 27 people in it, sweating all over each other, to moving online.
I'm going to take you through an at-home hack that you can use with socks. Okay, you are going to extend one arm, come back in.
We ran a session called Sweat and Connect, and we made that available to anyone for free. We maxed out our capacity on Zoom of people sweating and connecting, not just in Singapore, but all over the world. It's brought us together as a group of franchisees. We have WhatsApp groups, we have network calls with HQ around, ways to keep the community in Singapore as a whole going. Sales techniques, how do we get our members back into the studios, et cetera, et cetera.
Due to shifting COVID restrictions, Mel has shut and opened her studio 3 times since March of 2020 to June of 2021. She's seen 65% of members return, and she expects more to return as capacity restrictions ease. And F45's bet on gyms bouncing back gets bigger. While the company has had 2 false starts going public, it made their Wall Street debut in July 2021. The goal? To raise $325 million in the IPO, with the belief that investors will buy into their business model and bullish outlook. According to a leading industry association, the pandemic will cause a contraction of about $15.6 billion. In the US alone, 25% of the nation's 50,000 gyms will close their doors for good. Thankfully for companies like Zumba, their business model doesn't rely on the brick and mortar, but their instructors did.
Our tech team had something called Zin Studio, Zoom Instructor Network Studio. And it was an app that allowed them to transmit their class. And around 75% of our instructors transitioned to virtual classes. It allowed us to give our instructors more options on where to teach and how to teach.
According to Zumba, nearly 1 million people are taking virtual Zumba classes each week, filmed by instructors around the world. And it's not only because people wish to work out.
We've received so many messages online of people who have started taking Zumba during the pandemic because of the mental health benefits. Mental health, I feel, is also a very big piece of our future. We have something important that we bring.
Gyms around the world are on a rebound to reclaim their former role in our lives. And as we walk back into a changed fitness world, fitness players like Zumba and F45 will continue to be on a path to revive, reinvent, and reconnect. To come out with even more innovative, productive, and fun ways to reach greater health and mental well-being.
I have seen post-pandemic this softening in ways. There's a lot less, Nike just do it, slogans that are really kind of brutalistic or disciplined. I think we're returning to this more holistic understanding of what a fit person is, what a healthy person is, and what a well person is. We'll see what new trends emerge from that trajectory.
The sizzle of a patty, the ooze of a dumpling, and the crunch of fried chicken. But looks can be deceiving, because everything you've just seen is not meat.
It looks like normal meat texture. They really look similar.
I mean, it tastes like meat.
Now I'm not sure anymore.
Which one's not meat? This one's not meat? So this one's actually meat? Oh, wow.
Meatless meats are on a meteoric rise and is projected to become a US $1.5 billion industry by 2022. This wave of change in the way we eat is only made possible through visionaries like Quorn, pioneer of plant-based foods. And more recently, those who've dared to be different. Impossible Foods, serving up a never-before-seen product, a burger that bleeds. And it has a big mission.
The only way we can change that system is to produce products that can outcompete and outperform an animal.
You never get a second chance. Whatever you launch first, it's a do or die.
Quorn was able to discover something that would not only be a good protein, but would also be a positive impact on the planet.
I was trying to put the concept across to influential leaders. It was very tough. We're just way ahead of the game.
This is the plant-based burger that took the world's appetite by storm. This dietary savior has entered 5 markets in just 4 years. They've conjured a burger that feels and tastes like the real deal. And it bleeds.
This was the first time you could try a product that just sort of tasted like it was the language of meat. It wasn't the language of things that came from plants.
Henry Woodward is responsible for putting these bad boys in front of F&B players worldwide. And his company, Impossible Foods, wants to take a bite out of the age-old meat-making industry. And for good reason. The world's appetite for meat is becoming too insatiable. Asia accounts for almost half of the world's meat consumption and is in danger of eating its way to an environmental disaster. According to the Singapore Food Agency, the island state, as one of the smallest cities in Asia, sees an average person eat 62 kilos of meat per capita per year. That's more than the average person in Malaysia, Japan, Philippines, or Thailand. But why is it that we crave meat so much?
I like the fats. We will die without meat.
For like 10,000 years, we've been doing pretty amazing things to pieces of meat.
Especially being French, red meat is at the center of the French cuisine. Probably fried chicken from KFC and like the sweet and sour pork, because it tastes nice.
One thing is clear, we love meat. And this habit goes back 2.5 million years ago.
The very beginning, we were not hunters, we were scavengers for a very long time. So we would basically eat what was left over.
Marta Zaraska, author of Meat Hooked, spent 2 years obsessing over why we eat meat at all.
The climate has changed. In Central Africa, it became drier and the foods that our ancestors were relying on became less available. What became more available were animals. and they discovered that the food really filled up the stomachs. So what some scientists say is meat made us human. Our brains take about 25% of our body's resting calories. That's a huge amount. For example, other mammals, such as cats or dogs, for them it's 3 to 5%. Our brains are real energy guzzlers. And for that, we needed a very high quality diet that would be easier to digest, more loaded with calories, and meat was that.
During the days of royalty, meat was an exclusive dish afforded to only the wealthy, with the king having dominion over all land and animals.
There is something called the scarcity principle. Humans crave things more when they are not easy to obtain.
To the Allied nations, food is a weapon of freedom. Here is the answer to fascism.
Even Second World War, meat was rationed.
The civilian ration of bacon in Britain is 4 ounces per person per week.
And when I was a child, I grew up in communist Poland. I used to stand with my mother for hours in lines to get a small piece of meat.
Post-World War II, meat made a comeback, with mass marketing campaigns encouraging the consumption of meat, that it was delicious and nutritious.
Meat is good for you.
The 1960s, a time of great change, great song. And when it came to food in the West, it had to be meat.
Abundant protein-rich meat contributes to the well-being and strength of our people and our country.
But there were fears that we had bitten off more protein than we could chew because of this book.
1968, a best-selling book, literally exploded into the public consciousness. The premise was that the world's growing population would quickly exceed our food production capabilities and cause mass starvation throughout the world.
It was this that drove a trailblazing Brit to look for a solution. An alternative protein that had the potential to eliminate food shortage and widespread famine.
I think it's a beautiful place to start for me because, look, I'm actually from that period.
This is Marco Bertacca, CEO for Quorn, who aims to be just as visionary as the company's founder, Lord Rank.
Lord Rank started to address a future problem because he was able to discover something that would not only be a good protein, but would also be an incredible fit for an environmental question.
Lord Rank scoured the world for an alternative. He had no experience in the field, but he was driven by a mission to find a microorganism that was nutritious and that could feed the world. During a 5-year worldwide search, they tested over 3,000 organisms from soil samples from the UK to Chile to India. He was to be the pioneer in plant-based proteins.
First mover advantage has huge upsides because you can build knowledge about the industry, you can understand and build a consumer base way before your competitors can interfere.
This is Lawrence Kohler, a business expert with 20 years of experience in marketing and branding strategy.
In the food industry, where regulation is so big, it can also be quite challenging. In the food industry in particular, you cannot afford to have it not right. I mean, it's a do or die at the end of the day.
It was a rigorous process to find the IT protein. The organism needed to be safe, nutritious, scalable, and have a low carbon footprint. Ironically, they found their answer right in their backyard in Buckinghamshire, England, and they called it mycoprotein.
We call it mycoprotein because it's high in proteins and it's derived from fungus, and the Latin word of fungus is myco.
Andy Kasumo is the first scientist Quorn hired in Asia. Similar to the process of making beer or wine, mycoprotein requires the process of fermentation. But instead of straining it for the liquid, Quorn keeps the dough like fungi.
This is actually the biomass of the fungus. The fungus has a morphology that looks like meat in terms of the fibrosity and the fibers. When we tear it, you see that it has this meat-like texture. This is the natural textures of the mycoprotein itself.
The cell structure of mycoprotein is almost exactly like the cell structure of meat. A meat replacement? with a meaty texture. This is Quorn's holy grail, and like chicken, it can go with almost anything.
From a science perspective, I look at three things: texture, taste, and what I call mouthful. A little bit bouncy, a little bit starchy, and obviously the flavor that goes with it. This is what I call a marriage between science and art.
So it's about creating the right chemistry in one's mouth. But psychologically, there's a lot more to it than just texture.
You have fat, so this is the texture, which suggests to our bodies that there is lots of calories in the food. Then there is so-called umami taste, which signifies the presence of proteins in the food. Then there is the salty flavor. Also, salt is hard to find in nature, so there is, again, something that we really crave. And then the Maillard reaction. Maillard reaction is something that happens when you, for example, grill a piece of meat and this kind of browning happens on the surface. They signified exactly to our ancestors that it was full of calories, full of protein.
It takes a lot to satisfy our prehistoric palate. But fast forward to today, what we love about meat is possible to find in plant-based foods. And we've never needed a better solution more.
It's a very simple calculation. There's just not enough land to grow enough animals, to consume animals the way that our world population currently wants. Meat is extremely inefficient. If you're going to eat a chicken, you first obviously have to grow the chicken. And to grow the chicken, you need food to feed the chicken. For every calorie that you get out of a chicken, you need 9 calories to go in. That is pretty inefficient, and actually a chicken is the most efficient animal that we eat.
Our world is going through a human-induced global warming. According to NASA, 2019 was one of the warmest years of the history of the planet, with livestock being one of the largest contributors. Greenhouse gas emissions, deforestation, added water stress. And that's what drove Stanford biochemist Pat Brown to create Impossible Foods.
If we could just invent a more sustainable way to turn plants into delicious, affordable meats that uncompromising meat consumers actually prefer to what they get today from animals.
The revolutionary plant-based foods company of the millennium. The first order, building his dream team. The first hire being Nick Hala.
So I've been in the beef and dairy farming world most of my life. And your job as a farmer is to produce really good food affordably for masses while maintaining your land. I had never realized before, because we do feed animals a lot of food for what we eat out of them. So it is a very inefficient and a very dirty system because of the demand of that system, and we have to change that paradigm.
This paradigm that Pat and Nick set out to shift is a US $1.4 trillion meat industry. It's an industry that's pretty much as old as time itself. But unfazed, Impossible's mission is to remove all animal products from the food industry by 2035.
That was the mandate. We need to recreate food. That's a huge mandate, and it's really hard to execute on something that big of a vision.
To win the hearts and minds, and most importantly, stomachs of discerning consumers, Impossible needed to produce a meat that pushes the boundaries in sight, smell, texture, and taste. But with no business model to follow or food science know-how to learn from, how did Impossible become such a worldwide phenomenon? This is what we want to believe our world will always be. This is what we don't want to see. This, not this. But if there's anything 2020 has taught us, is that we cannot afford to look away.
We reported the largest number of COVID-19 positive tests.
China has reported 72,528 cases.
It's been a nightmare. We have a volume of sick people like you can't believe.
They have tested different places in the market, and so they have found indeed the coronavirus that is now responsible of this epidemic in humans.
To reduce pollution and pandemics drastically, Henry Woodward from Impossible Foods believes we need to take a hard look at the way we eat.
I mean, we've been burning the candle at multiple ends. It doesn't take a genius to realize that we're over 7 billion people today. We're going to be 10 billion people by 2050. and covering the world in cows to feed 10 billion people just doesn't work. Asia consumes close to 50% of all the world's meat. It's the fastest growing region for meat consumption.
The region's pursuit of meaty pleasures is projected to increase to 33% by 2030. According to an outlook done by the Food and Agriculture Organization, Asia is expected to account for 56% of global meat imports by 2028.
Well, you can do the math. We're going to be very, very dependent on import if we don't change the way that we consume our proteins.
But things weren't always like this. Back in the 1960s, meals weren't centered around meat, but rather vegetables.
Here in Asia, many cultures are very accustomed to plant-based cuisines. The very first vegetarian records coming from ancient India, 8th century before Common Era. If you look at the Chinese culture, for example, it goes also back for thousands of years.
But back in the 1980s in the UK, plant-based foods is just about to make a debut. Quorn, pioneer in plant-based foods, took 20 years to perfect their recipe. To capture the meat-loving UK market, the first Quorn products took a spin on Britain's beloved pie in 1985.
Having a product where the consumer could actually compare, that would be crucial. It was really like the novelty. We have been able for the first time to replicate meat, and it really started to attract a lot of consumer interest.
Quorn's pie was a clever product at the time in the 80s because it was all about vegetarian. It was a very niche market, so they had to broaden their appeal, and the pie was obviously in the UK a fairly well-known product. However, there were certain prejudices where your protein intake wouldn't kind of be sufficient anymore because you cut out meat, which always has been seen as the main source for protein. So I think they have faced much of that prejudice.
Quorn countered this protein myth by fusing their plucky British origins with the messaging of their nutritious value. And who better than UK's football legend Ryan Giggs to deliver that message?
Quorn burgers are a tasty alternative to meat and very healthy.
It's a win for both, I would say. Champion with champion.
Armed with partnerships, sales rocketed between 1994 and 2000. They injected the profits into a new fermenter and food processing facility, which allowed them to scale, breaking into 9 European markets by the turn of the millennium. The next frontier? The US of A in 2002. But it would only be 8 years later that the food industry would see a strong plant-based player. In 2010, Impossible Foods was born.
Hi, I'm Pat Brown, CEO and founder of Impossible Foods, a company with a simple mission: to completely replace the use of animals as a food production technology by 2035.
I think many very successful companies have very bold and big missions. It helps to align all the employees, believing that they are actually working not only for profitable business, they're working for a cause. It signals to the people out there that they are up for a mission and for a cause that people can join, and that's why timing is so crucial.
The genesis of Impossible started on the heels of the swine flu pandemic, H1N1. As pork prices soared, the world was a little more woke to the vulnerability of the meat industry. The Impossible team needed to find a solution fast.
We realize in food, consumption and patterns and trends start with the consumer. So the only thing that's really going to drive that infrastructure to change is make products that'll make it really easy for consumers to make that choice.
So Impossible had to science a product that outperforms meat on every level. No pressure. They decided that since the beef industry is the biggest polluter, it would be their main competition. The weapon of choice? A burger, reinventing the timeless American classic.
To be successful launching also something in the plant-based market is make it look like something that is comfortable and familiar. So any innovation, you can look into design, you can look into food, or technology, doesn't matter. It has to have an element of familiarity.
Let's rewind to find out why this perfect marriage between patty and bun became such a nostalgic icon. America needs to thank White Castle, the first ever burger chain in 1921. With its stately white walls, the fast food chain elevated burgers from working-class junk food to a food for everybody. Burger joints began popping up in droves, and by 1940, it became the quintessential American meal. Propelled by the rise of pop culture and fast food chains, the burger became a quick worldwide phenomenon. With burgers so entrenched in diets globally, Impossible knew that this was the way to go. But they weren't just targeting any type of customer.
Our target of the meat lover was a very conscious decision from day one in the company. And the only way you can change that ecosystem to be in a more sustainable earth is to convert meat consumption over to plant-based consumption. And I think with burgers, it's meat forward, it's culturally iconic.
For the product to appeal to the masses, the pioneering team needed to dive into meat at a molecular level.
For the first several years of the company, it was all basic science to understand what actually makes meat, fish, and dairy foods so absolutely delicious. And we realized that when you actually start breaking down meat flavor, meat aroma, it is very complex. There's all kinds of chemistry that happens as you're cooking. The simplicity that our team found is as you look at that cooking process, almost all that chemistry that happens when you cook for flavor and aroma is driven around heme.
Key to that blend of novel and nostalgia, this little magic compound, heme. It's an essential molecule found abundantly in every living animal, but also in plants. To extract heme, one way would be to take it from the roots of legumes directly. Impossible's extraction of heme is to take the DNA from these legumes and insert it into a genetically engineered yeast. They then ferment this yeast, very similar to the way Belgian beer is made, to produce heme. The result? A patty that looks like the real thing.
When you look at innovation from a psychological angle, people buy into innovation on the basis of seeing something familiar and seeing something new. I think that's where Impossible did a really good job, because the familiarity of the look, the feel, the smell of the meat-like kind of appearance, together with actually it's only a plant-based, it's completely new. And I think it's the right mixture.
With a finished product, it's time for the team to face their plant-based anxieties and serve it to the American public. The 1980s, the first Macintosh was born.
I'd like to show you Macintosh in person.
NASA's first space shuttle was built, and in the UK, Quorn was taking off.
Crunchy fillets. They're low in fat and cholesterol-free.
Then this happened.
All of the factors that led to the emergence of mad cow disease are present in the United States.
Results confirm the presence of BSE in this animal. A sample was taken and the carcass was incinerated.
The panic about this favorite protein drove hordes to look for healthier, disease-free options. With bigger production facilities, Quorn rolled out all across Central Europe, providing ready-to-cook food favorites. Sales climbed rapidly between 1994 through to the turn of the millennium. With a stronghold in Europe, Quorn decided to expand their reach.
This is what Quorn represented when we decided to go abroad. Our belief that we can have a much bigger impact because the same elements of personal health and planet are present around the world. That it was not just a UK story.
There's always discussed the first mover advantage, which is always great to be the first in the market and building the knowledge and all about it. But it also has its flip side, because when they launched, obviously they were challenged then by the establishment, by the meat industry and others, whether the ingredients would be all right, whether it would be actually a healthy product. And that really backfired on them very, very big.
Just after Quorn launched in the States, it faced a mushrooming controversy. In order for the product to feel familiar, Quorn decided to label mycoprotein, a form of fungi, under the mushroom family.
Quorn's active ingredient amounts to mycoprotein, but that's triggered charges of deceptive marketing. The Center for Science and the Public Interest defines mycoprotein as a fungus or a mold that's grown in a vat, so it worries about allergic reactions.
This play on truth backfired. It was revealed that mycoprotein was actually a form of mold, which for some could cause an allergic reaction. The Center for Science and the Public Interest in America collected more than 1,000 adverse reaction reports since 2002.
So it takes a long way to kind of rebuild that trust again, to say that's actually not true, and we have to put our own R&D in to actually prove that case. Can you sustain yourself long enough to actually make that happen?
Education is extremely important. When you eat bread, you never call that is a yeast food, maybe. You just call it as a bread. In some market, people see fungus as a bad thing. But I always tell people there's a good bacteria, there's a bad bacteria. There is a good fungus, and there is a bad fungus.
While there was a setback, numerous research papers were published supporting the nutritious value of corn. The natural fungi is high in protein and fiber, has zero cholesterol and sugar, and low in fat. Quorn engaged Mo Farah, most successful British track athlete in modern Olympic Games, to endorse the product.
People say, what's your secret? Practice, protein. Practice, protein.
Quorn is also being served in hospitals because of its nutrition profile.
The amount of muscle mass that was rebuilt following exercise was actually higher through a Quorn diet than with the animal diet. This is really pushing the boundary of what can be done. It started all from health, but now we can see that some of the benefits are even taking Quorn into a bit of a higher space or a higher ground. That combined with the FDA acknowledgement that very quickly won us the right to play in such a challenging market like the American market.
Quorn faced many obstacles in America, but Asia was a whole different ballgame. The term plant-based was not heard of. Vegetarianism was mostly associated with religion, and meat with status and wealth. Yet a little-known Singaporean brand would try to create the world's first vegan burger.
When I told my friends about the idea of a vegan burger, they definitely think it's crazy. The first question will be, is there any vegans in Singapore? The main obstacle is the lack of ingredients and resources. All the suppliers I speak to, they do not see a need to abstain egg and dairy from the bun and the patty because that's the main binding ingredient. So the R&D process was the main challenge. It's just very tough looking for the right partner to manufacture it.
Driven by his mission to provide a healthy fast food alternative, it took 8 years to perfect his recipe. It has remained small but strong with one outlet in Singapore.
You know, when I first started out with the idea of vegan burger, and I was trying to put the concept across to influential leaders in Singapore, it was very tough. I realized that maybe the Singapore market is just not ready for a concept like this. We're just way ahead of the game.
Alex knew that if he wanted his burgers to take off, he'd need to make it in the land of burgers. He moved his family and sunk his money into a vacant lot in San Francisco in 2015. It would take 2 years of localizing the menu and working as a general manager of the store before Veganburg was able to get the attention that it needed. Finally winning over the American palate in 2018, Alex clinched his first franchisee.
Within the first year, we were named the top 50 restaurant brands to look out for in the restaurant news. And within the second year of the operation, we were awarded the San Francisco Green Business Award. And the third year, we were so fortunate to have the top 100 movers and shakers in the restaurant industry. It is starting to be mainstream. So I think it's in the perfect timing. Today, there's many other similar concepts, which I believe got inspired by us as well.
Vying for the top spot in the same territory is Impossible Foods. They boldly targeted the wider meat-loving demographic and dreamed up a burger so deceptively similar to meat, they believed it could fool even the top of the food chain.
Culture in meat is really driven in the US by these culturally iconic people in the major cities. And we went to the most stringent restaurants in the world for meat. So the first time we started meeting with chefs, we had tons of skepticism until they started cooking with it. And you could just see their minds opening up and like, wow, I can do this with it. I can try this. This is the first product from plants that chefs would put their name behind and say, this is meat made a better way, meat made from plants. And we really tapped into the meat culture that way.
This naturally made this the nouveau burger that the trend-seeking customer had to try.
Awareness is everything. Without awareness, you cannot do anything, especially for such an innovation in food and beverage. It is crucial to have people talk about it, but also raise the trust that this is actually something that's worth trying.
The first time I had Impossible in a restaurant, there was a table of 10, probably mid-20s consumers at the table next to us. Everybody had an Impossible burger. I don't think anybody at the table talked for 10 minutes. They just took their phones out, took pictures, started putting it on Instagram, started telling all their friends. And that's when you really knew that this was a cultural moment that was going to continue to spread. And I think it really puts the power in consumers to drive this global movement and drive a global environmental movement.
This level of marketing tapped on the wave of environmental consciousness that is sweeping millennials today. 2019 was defined by the likes of Greta Thunberg, a Swedish child environmental activist who sparked worldwide protests, encouraged a massive youth movement, and stood up to politicians for robbing the next generation of their futures.
So early on, we would do brand surveys of why people buy plant-based meats, and all the environmental metrics, better for the environment, lower pollution, lower water use, we're right at the bottom. And we've seen that conversation completely change. Now when we do our tracking, the number 3 purchase driver is the environmental statistics behind it. And so we're seeing how important that is becoming to consumers.
The push to market came fast and strong, making Impossible a household name in only a short space of time. But their meteoric rise also alerted regulators. The Center of Food Safety were concerned about the deregulatory trend that was occurring, which prioritized corporate profit over public health and safety. The institution was concerned that there wasn't enough convincing evidence to prove that heme was safe for consumption.
The heme protein that's derived from genetically modified yeast as a production technology is something we put a lot of work to on the scientific side. One of our core principles that we'll always hold to as a company is that our products will be more nutritious than what we replace, and that's really important. We have lower fats than meat from a cow, and as we continue to innovate, our products will get even more and more nutritious.
Contrary to naysayers, based on Impossible's own studies and a later FDA approval in 2019, it is concluded that heme is safe for human consumption. Moreover, the cow is not getting any better. We've all read headlines of red meat and its links to cardiovascular diseases. And it's already caught up with us in Asia, with the region being the epicenter of cholesterol dangers. But these fears are still not deterring our demand for meat. Beef consumption in Asia is expected to grow by 2.7 million tons by 2030, the largest gain across any global region, according to the latest outlook released by the Food and Agriculture Organization. And while that is a lot of beef, that isn't even Asia's main meat staple. This is pork. Countries such as China, South Korea, Vietnam, and Taiwan all credit pork for at least half of total per capita meat consumption, according to the Euromonitor International. So how is the plant-based movement evolving to capture such an essential region? The year of 2020 had everyone screaming for a do-over. It was defined by the coronavirus outbreak, locking down cities, confining global populations, halting economies, disrupting supply chains.
You're going to pay more on your shopping trips for meat to the supermarkets and meat shops. The supply chain is having a hard time keeping up.
People are panicking. They don't think there's going to be enough meat.
Especially our meat supply chains.
We've definitely seen a rise in plant-based meat sales due to COVID-19. And we think it's mostly so because the animal agricultural sector has been affected quite badly because many of their workers fell sick, which led to the closure of factories and then a disrupted supply chain. Both farmed and caged wild animals are the perfect breeding ground for zoonotic diseases. They have heightened stress levels, they're packed together with way too many, unnatural diets, poor sanitation.
According to the WHO, there are 20 pandemics in history that have been cited to be passed from animal to human, also defined as zoonotic diseases. All came through the consumption of meat. Aware of the ticking time bomb is David Jung, founder of Green Monday. His company has been providing a pork alternative to over 8 countries since 2018, their latest debut being in Singapore. At the height of the pandemic, the company saw the sales of its product, dubbed OmniPork, surge by 120%.
A lot more people are awakening to the fact that animal agriculture truly is unsustainable, unsafe, and extremely broken. African swine fever, we're talking about hundreds of millions of pigs have died in the last 2 years, and still there's no sign of stopping. I hate to say this, but it takes something as dramatic as the pandemic to kind of wake people up.
But pulling away from pork is not going to be easy. Half of the world's pork is produced and consumed by Asia. But David believes his revolutionary ground pork has what it takes to make these cultural icons guilt-free.
What are the things that people crave most? We engaged a third-party agency to conduct a study, and luncheon meat ranked first in many regions within Asia. There's no secret that most luncheon meats have nitrate, which is carcinogenic, and then of course the sodium content is off the chart. So OmniPork luncheon is 60-something% lower in sodium, half the calorie, half the fats, at the same time high protein, high calcium content.
This revolutionary ground pork consists of a mixture of rice, peas, non-GMO soy, and shiitake mushroom. Beet extract is what's used to mimic the blood. And while their product checks all the plant-based boxes, it's staying true to its Asian target market that has allowed OmniPork to scale rapidly.
We clearly are Asia-based. Choosing pork was kind of a no-brainer. They can put it in fried rice, stir-fry noodles, turn it into a meatball, turn it into a patty, or whatever shape they like. The possibilities really are endless.
Plant-based players like David are part of a rapidly growing market. In Singapore, there's Shiok Meats that looks to produce lab-grown seafood, Alchemy Fiber or seed fuel, which provides a plant-based flour. Singapore also has big food tech aspirations, setting aside a $50 million investment to players who can produce proteins of the future.
We expect either Singapore or Japan to be the first country that actually regulates cultivated meat, which is going to be like a huge thing. So Singapore has the 30 by 30 program where they foresee production of food being produced here in Singapore in 2030 by 30%.
The East is growing rapidly. So how are Western counterparts looking to stay competitive? Quorn, pioneer in alternative proteins, believes localizing and diversifying will pay off. From when they first released their product in the 1980s, breaking into the US market in 2002, Quorn in 2015 decided that Asia was their next big bet.
This is a line of corn dim sum lines that we have. So you have the shomai, the puff, the bun, and the glutinous rice. How do we make this product suited to the local market? You need to know each of the different culture, religion, diversity that they have, and be able to adapt to the flavor and cuisines that they really want to do.
Since entering the market in 2015, they've now got a whole range aimed at Asian palate, from chicken rice to rendangs. Quorn also had another strategy to set itself apart, placing carbon labeling on their products.
Our ultimate goal, we want to take out less than what we put back as a positive impact on the planet.
It's not only being the first mover, you have to keep being the first mover all the time. And that puts a lot of pressure on the company. Stay very nimble and keep on listening and adapt to what the market is telling you. It's going to be very interesting also to see how Impossible and others are moving forward in other Asian markets.
Meatless burger maker Impossible Foods has set its sights on winning over hearts, stomachs, and wallets of Asian meat eaters. They made their debut in Asia via the city of Hong Kong about just 18 months after launching in their home territory.
Most brands, especially food companies, they will spend years in their home market. We rushed to Asia, and that was very strategic. We're looking at where are the sort of lighthouses, the centers of influence and culture and food culture in the region. The initial cities that come to mind are definitely Hong Kong.
This bustling city is among the world's biggest meat consumers. An average Hong Konger tucks into 3 times more meat than the daily recommended amount. To disrupt Hong Kong's love affair with meat, Impossible needed to study the local palate.
We really want to show product market fit and culinary diversity and credibility. So really it was about showing that Impossible works in not just Western cuisine, but it works as a mapo tofu. It works as a sijito. It works as a murtabak. It works as a dumpling.
Impossible introduced Asian-friendly products next to their burger offering. Partnering with high-end restaurant Beef and Liberty, the Impossible Burger quickly became its top 3 best-selling burgers. Having made their mark in Hong Kong, Singapore was next.
I spent a lot of time understanding the zeitgeist of the Singapore food scene. And one thing that we wouldn't want to ignore is the hawker centers. That's the beating heart of the Singapore food culture right now. So we got in touch with the management team at Lau Pa Sat, which is obviously probably like the grand dam of the hawker centers here in Singapore. And we brought in a couple of our guest chefs from Singapore and worked with a couple local hawkers. We had thousands of people turn up. There were definitely people in the queue that we asked, and they didn't even know what they were queuing for.
It took Impossible just 2 years to enter 3 markets in Asia, but it's yet to capture a crucial market. The country most hungry for meat, China. Fueled by a prosperous middle class, meat consumption grew almost 7-fold over the last 3 decades. While pork is the main choice of protein, beef consumption is growing rapidly.
When we look at our strategy overall for Asia Pacific, China is the very obvious elephant in the room. We really can't succeed as a company and with our mission without China.
I can only hope that they will have different strategies entering mainland China. I think it's a much bigger challenge to find the right strategy. It's a market where there's very culturally very different to anything else in the world. So it's a tough market to crack.
Clearly, one does not simply enter the Chinese market. Just take a look at Western tech giants like eBay, Amazon, Uber, and Walmart all failed to successfully capture the local audience.
It is important to have local partners. I mean, we are not going to pretend that we know everything. That's just humanly not possible. It does require the change in formula, not just labeling, not just packaging, but formula.
China is also known to have huge beef with a particular process the Impossible patty greatly relies on: genetic modification. A nationwide survey conducted in China found that 46.7% of respondents had negative views of GMO. But it's only through these means that Impossible is able to conceive of 2 ingredients crucial to the burger: heme and soy protein.
There's been some skepticism and concern on GM products. And the way we've tackled this is we have to be very transparent. And so the first thing we need to do is educate. Every time we're going into new markets with our product, we take every opportunity we can to educate and demystify what Impossible is.
Chinese customers got their first taste of Impossible's localized offerings, debuting 50,000 samples at the China International Import Exposition in 2019. They roped in a master chef to serve up their meats in the form of siu mai. But hold up. Any savvy Asian would know that siu mai is made with pork, and that's exactly Impossible's strategy to capture the Asian market.
I lived in China for nearly 5 years, and it's been said, you can measure the health of the Chinese economy by the price of a pound of pork. So for China and for Asia in general, pork is critical.
We had to make the product more robust, more versatile. We're still very early in our business side. I would say a lot of the challenges that we're going to have, we don't know, and that's a good thing. And as long as we look at this as a learning opportunity in every step that we go through, then really build the ecosystem that we need to drive success.
For Impossible's China dreams, it's still early days. The plant-based meat wars are already taking off in China, with big players like Beyond, OmniPork having entered the market, and Gen Meat and Starfield are growing fast in the country. But judging from their track record, nothing seems too impossible for the team. And it's fueling a global shift towards greater plant-based innovations.
Can we replace? Can we give them a better product? Just like how electric vehicles, we're not asking people not to drive, we simply ask them, use this better version. This is the evolution of food.
For the next generations, for our children, we just need to create a better way of consuming meat, and we can definitely do that.
I have 3 kids that are now 23, 21, and a little daughter of 18. And when I started to talk to them about joining Quorn, their reaction was something I've never seen before. I'm gonna do everything I can to see in the eyes of my kids that they are proud of what they've achieved.
It's through the boldness of first movers like Veganburg, which dared to dream, OmniPork, which played to their strengths, Quorn, which has learnt to reinvent, and most of all, those undeterred of the impossible, that we as a people can begin to have greater awareness of the state of our waistlines, the well-being of our environment, and our world.
It's just established, so what's the next thing?
Eating Michelin-starred food in the comfort of your own home. Tasting an exciting new cuisine every day of the week, just by clicking an app. It wasn't always like that. Dining out was once a novelty, only for the wealthy. It wasn't long before that notion would be completely challenged.
This was really their first interaction with technology. This is like the iPhone of 1902.
Never before had this process of choosing food presented to the dining public.
Since then, technology and societal changes have brought a wave of affordable dining options.
Sure, if we're going to talk about numbers, delivery is already more than a $100 billion industry.
And now, the restaurant industry is going through yet another evolution. From brick and mortar into the cloud.
The global restaurant industry is a multi-trillion-dollar industry. There's absolutely enough room for, many, many different concepts.
So we have to re-engineer what our cooks do in the kitchen. A traditional restaurant may take 8, 10, 15 minutes to prepare. Ours right now is between 3 and 5 minutes.
So when and how did we start eating from a little box?
Being in a restaurant on Zoom? I'm not sure.
Well, it will be like advanced technology things, like robots cooking food for you.
Pixel food.
Or like a virtual restaurant, like a restaurant. Like the food you see in games. Like Super Mario, there's a banana, right? I think. Yeah. Then you'll see a banana named after Super Mario.
If you said virtual restaurant to me, it'd be like those guys that only set up in dark kitchens to serve delivery orders specifically.
Virtual restaurant. To me, it sounds like I'm going to look at a computer screen and not get anything into my stomach.
So this is one of our cloud kitchens, which is kitchen number 9. So as you can see, It's a little tighter than most restaurants are. This is about 12 square meters, so about 140 square feet.
Sean Smithson is the co-founder of Tiffin Labs and resident kitchen choreographer.
And we've designed this efficiently so you can capture the steps of service perfectly. So when our chefs are in here working, they know exactly where they go from space to space and from piece of equipment to piece of equipment. How do we build a brand that doesn't exist on the street, that doesn't exist in the bricks and mortar space?
But why were they even thinking about building a restaurant without a physical space? Michael Schaefer is an expert on the latest food trends.
There's a lot of overhead in a traditional restaurant that you might not have in a kitchen that's just producing for deliveries.
The COVID-19 pandemic hit. Restaurant spaces became empty shells with no foot traffic and wasted rental costs. Real estate that was once an asset was now a liability. So the Tiffin Labs team decided to strip out the unnecessary costs and focus on where the money was at.
Sure. I mean, if we're going to talk about numbers, delivery is already more than a $100 billion industry. We expect it to nearly double by 2024. Looking at Asia overall, which of course is going to be dominated by China, and that's going to be one of the fastest growing regions in the world.
The way people live and work is different. In the US, many times people leave work at 5:30 and go home and they drive a lot. Here it's really built around the density of the cities. It's built around working from 9 to 7, 9 to 8. Your time is that commodity.
In Southeast Asia, Indonesia takes the biggest slice of the food delivery pie, with Singapore coming in strong in second place. Why? Because 80% of Singaporeans own a smartphone. And with a changing society, less people are cooking at home and more are turning to fast and fuss-free food delivery services. And in 2020, Singapore was Tiffin Labs' first test market for their business.
Singapore is actually a very, very good microcosm for us. It was a template for the rest of the world, right? It was a high-density city with high-knowledge workers, disposable income, high cost, high labor, high food cost. How do we make sure the economics work? How do we grow in places that are already ripe for disruption and really make a difference in those markets where we feel like we can adapt and grow fast?
But who is the online customer? Teenagers, university students, young working professionals. But now, ordering food online has become a habit for every age. And since COVID-19's lockdown, everyone has joined the online bandwagon.
People ordering more in because it's easy.
Lawrence Kohler uses behavioral economics and psychology to help brands and companies create business opportunities.
Digital is completely adapted by everyone, even by the seniors in every country. It's easy to do. Of course, a big trend to convenience. It's much easier these days to really order food in and have a huge variety at your fingertip.
But delivery is not, well, revolutionary. The legend goes Queen Margarita, tired of eating fancy food, ordered a meal fit for a commoner to be delivered right to her royal quarters. Mahadeo Havichibachi started a lunch delivery service in Mumbai, the Dabbawalas, the 125-year-old network that still feeds Mumbai today. Industrialization and the technology revolution led to Domino's Pizza, delivering takeaway to you. And then came the app revolution.
Since the dawn of humankind, human beings have tried to increase the profitability of a food source by reducing the amount of energy and time invested in obtaining it.
Adam Wenzel is a food psychologist, researching why we eat the food we eat.
So for example, if you have to drive 30 minutes to pick up a pizza, it's actually less profitable in terms of the energy it yields and the time invested versus having the exact same pizza delivered. So in a way, things like vending machines and instant foods, and certainly delivery pizzas, are the epitome of optimal foraging.
Optimal foraging today means grab and go. And the latest foraging trend for the multi-trillion-dollar restaurant industry is fast casual chains. And that is exactly what the co-founder of Tiffin Labs, Nat, picked up at his last role.
I was part of the team that together launched the food business in Thailand. My job at Grab, I saw the impact of food delivery on consumers, merchants in the traditional F&B space, and saw very clearly what the gaps were.
The gap they identified was not an offshoot of a traditional restaurant. Instead, they toyed with a completely new concept, the virtual restaurant.
We spent almost a year studying the whole space to understand what worked, what didn't work. We really thought we came up with something revolutionary.
What exactly is a virtual restaurant? Also known as dark, ghost, or cloud kitchen. The virtual restaurant has no storefronts and no dine-in facilities. The only way you can order their food is through the internet, leading to its name, a kitchen in the clouds. And Tiffin Labs had plans to create the biggest network of cloud kitchens in the world. Nearly a century ago, dining out in the late 1800s looked a little different. It was all about the long, leisurely lunch and fine dining. But all that was just about to change.
A food truck? It sounds like the massaging chair. It's the automat, octopus, fish food, seafood.
You just sit down, you put it in, beep, 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 and it maybe just boop, pops up. And that's your food. And it's like no interaction with anyone.
Well, when I was living in Sweden and younger, then automat was you put in a coin and you opened up and there was a piece of chocolate or something else.
Jan has spent several years researching our dining habits across the decades.
I'm not approaching restaurants as a fan. I'm not approaching it nostalgically. It's a way to examine it and ask yourself, how did we get where we are today? All the social problems in the country, that you can find them reflected in restaurant history. Industrialization sort of spread of white-collar jobs also in cities, office jobs. That's part of the growth of modern capitalism. So people moved from rural areas into the city.
What starts to happen during the early 20th century as more and more people are working in factories, more women are joining the workforce. The workforce itself was becoming more diverse.
David Freeland is the author of Automats, Taxi Dances, and Vaudeville, a book about New York's social and cultural history.
People didn't have time for these long meals during the middle of the day. So we start to see the beginnings of what we would now call fast food.
Women really scrutinized restaurants. They were more conscious of hygiene and sanitation, and they really demanded cleaner, nicer, and more pleasant spaces to eat in.
This would be the cultural setting that would spark the automat craze in America. The automat was created in Germany in 1895. Like the modern vending machine, it was an automatic fast food restaurant serving food and drinks without the need for any human interaction.
And then you also had this distrust of waiters. They really liked the idea of serving themselves and not having to deal with waiting staff.
Lisa Hurwitz has spent the last 10 years researching the machine that would take the country by storm.
The story of Joseph Horn and Frank Hardart happened a long time ago. The story goes that a traveling salesman approached the team with this concept of an automatic restaurant.
An automatic restaurant that was all the rage in Germany.
My great-grandfather traveled to Europe to check it out.
Frank Hardart was born in Germany, but hadn't been back since he immigrated to New Orleans, Louisiana. And the first time he laid eyes on the automat in action, it was love at first sight. Rosemary Wiley knows all this because she's Frank Hardart's great-granddaughter.
They brought the automat on a ship, and the first one they bought sank. So they got another one. Took another year for it to be built and shipped.
In 1902, the automat, the shiny modern machine, was exactly what the working folks of America were looking for. Waiterless, fast, and efficient. It was the beginning of our love affair with quick and fast food. Started in 2020, Singapore's Tiffin Labs virtual restaurant is making global headlines, ditching dine-in for delivery.
I absolutely think virtual restaurants as a concept have disrupted the food and beverage industry. Already we're seeing packaged foods companies thinking about ways that they can get into prepared meals via delivery. That is the source of so much interest and concern, from some of the largest food and drink companies in the world. I think that alone, shows that this is very much a disruptive trend that will go on disrupting for some time.
But how did Tiffin Labs take this delivery trend and turn it into an innovation? They redesigned the traditional kitchen, and it began with this. In the average restaurant kitchen, approximately 1,000 square meters in size, you have a station for cleaning and washing, storage, food preparation, a cooking and a service station. A trusted system designed in the 1800s that had no reason to change, up until Tiffin Labs came along.
So this is one of our cloud kitchens, which is kitchen number 9. So as you can see, it's a little tighter than most restaurants are. This is about 12 square meters, so about 140 square feet. And we've designed this efficiently so you can capture the steps of surface perfectly. So when our chefs are in here working, they know exactly where they go from space to space and from piece of equipment to piece of equipment.
Tearing up the traditional kitchen was only the start. While traditional restaurants strive to hone in their brand and stand out in their chosen cuisine, Tiffin Labs needed to be able to cook, well, Thai, Italian, Chinese, Korean, Indian, Singaporean, and each cuisine comes under its very own brand.
I think the big change is the ability to experiment across multiple brands. Multiple cuisines can be very important for scale. If you're trying to become the largest player, you can make bets that you otherwise wouldn't make.
Multi-branding is nothing new. We've seen it in many, many markets, whether it's the car industry, the retail, the fashion industry.
Sometimes I jokingly ask my wife, what kind of chicken are we getting today? Tonight we are having squid.
I think I eat regularly quite a few different cuisines, possibly 4 or 5. I like it varied.
We like Japanese, Italian, not so much Indian. The other day we went for Korean, but it was okay, not too excited. But I like Western. And of course Chinese. We eat Chinese all the time.
We enjoy a variety of foods. And in fact, the more variety is present, the more we tend to eat. This is one of the reasons that a lot of candies, even candies that taste the same like M&Ms, come in a variety of colors, because that variety actually promotes consumption.
It helps you to generate economies of scale. Helps you on the supply, especially on the food business where it's less waste.
It sounds wonderful in theory, but cooking 6 dishes each from a different cuisine in a 12 square meter kitchen with 2 chefs can't be easy.
It became a dance and an orchestration. The biggest challenge was spatially defining how each one of the brands worked within the kitchen, and then how to make sure that they were coordinated so that you didn't have people walking all over each other.
Terrence Chua's job is to take everything chefs know about cooking and turn it into a process fit for a delivery-only kitchen.
So in a traditional restaurant, the food gets to the customer within 7 to 8 minutes from the kitchen to the customer. In a virtual kitchen, the food travels at least 45 minutes from the kitchen to the customer.
We have to re-engineer what our cooks do in the kitchen. For a virtual kitchen, you're focused solely on getting the best quality food in the quickest time frame to get the best experience.
So how crucial is time in this tiny, packed kitchen?
So if you fry chicken for 3 minutes, by the time it reaches the customer, it would have been perfect because of the carryover cooking within that 45-minute time gap. But if you were to fry it over like 6 minutes, it is really crispy. The crust is really crispy, but the protein inside the chicken could be really dry because the heat squeezes out the proteins and the moisture oozes out.
Time is of the essence in a delivery-only business, and packaging is key.
I think it's probably the 50-50. It's a very good marriage between the packaging and the product. We were starting to build our Potato Lab brand, which is a snack brand that has French fries. We brought about 50 orders of fries back. We put all this packaging out. We have probably 80 pieces of packaging, and we started sorting. But when it got into 30 and 45 minutes, the packaging really started to erode the product. And what we finally came down to was the best product we had was the one that we're trying. But even then, we continue to see it as multifaceted, right? It has to deliver the food high quality, and it has to be tasty, and it has to be a good experience.
Variety, time, packaging. Tiffin Labs' motto. Not so different from another fast food phenomenon from the past. In 1902, the automat, in all its gleaming glory, had just been unleashed on the American population.
They were extremely large, taller than us, very wide, and they were made of glass and marble. They were magnificent.
You might not even speak English yet, but you can go to the automat.
This was really their first interaction with technology. This is like the iPhone of 1902. You're really using technology by using an automat.
Chicken pot pie for $1.15. Halibut steak for $1.50. Delicious food at affordable prices. Culturally, the automat was groundbreaking.
And never before had this process of choosing food been presented to the dining public. It was just a giant machine full of all sorts of opportunity. The Horn & Hardart automats marketed choice. We see that now today where everything is about options and personalized. Starbucks.
So you see that in any developed country where we call it self-actualization psychologically, where people really want to express their individuality. And that leads to customization and personalization. So you don't want to order or buy something that everyone else has. You want to have something specific.
The other part of it is control. When we get to personalize food, we get to take control, right? And control of our own destiny.
By 1920, the economic model that fueled the automat's success was threatened by the Great Depression.
October 29, 1929, Black Tuesday. The New York Stock Exchange is in a panic.
America was giving up a traditional economy for a free market, and industrial workers began losing their jobs. Spending power plummeted, and people couldn't afford their favorite meal anywhere, let alone at the automat. But Horn and Hardart turned this crisis into an opportunity through one commodity.
A lot of people talk about the coffee. My father once met President Nixon, who told him, he said, Hardart, is that where those wonderful baked beans come from? And coffee was always another favorite. And the way it was dispensed was so beautiful and interesting from these dolphin spouts.
Before this, people were making coffee, clarifying it with eggshells, but that was not the way of the future. So they were so known for their fabulous cup of drip coffee. They were agreed upon as one of the best cups of coffee in the city, and it was so delicious. This was about to become something widely popular in Philadelphia and New York City, and they saw it first.
Quorn and Hardart practically invented America's coffee culture before Starbucks.
Pike Place Roast. Thank you all very much.
Employees at Starbucks raised their coffee cups to toast its newest brew. The coffee giant is launching what it says is an everyday cup of joe.
Howard Schultz, the founder of Starbucks, talked about how one of his inspirations for Starbucks was his experience as a child going to the automat. When he stepped foot in that automat was when he decided to be an entrepreneur, and it just never left him. Cafe culture was really a new thing to New York. Americans have never been thought of as people to take their time with eating. Americans are always on the go, always in a rush. And so this was really a new thing to sit and take your time.
The automat was able to adapt as an institution to other changes that were taking place within American life.
And in 1945, America won the war. Men returned to work, women went back home, and the microwave hit almost every house in the country.
And here's the real breakthrough. The oven uses radio waves at the frequencies used in radar. This reheats the meal in an incredibly short time. A complete meal in around 45 seconds.
When America changed, so did the automat.
They wanted to create a restaurant that would really appeal to the masses, and at that time, the masses meant women. One of Horn and Hardart's strategies to keep their skin in the game was to incorporate their food into your meal at home. Less work for mother was a slogan that represented, Mom, take some work off of your shoulders. Let us make your job of being a mother easier.
They had retail shops that would have food prepared that you could pick up a prepared meal.
And the idea was you just, microwaved it or put it in the oven.
By default, another great market for the automat were the very people mothers endeavored to feed to their fullest.
I've heard a lot of stories of kids talking about the ice cream or the hot apple pie with the vanilla cream sauce on top.
Chocolate chip cookies were one of our favorites. We got to bring them home in boxes. And macaroni and cheese. I just feel like it's a creamy comfort food, creamy, cheesy, warm.
The love for it was passed on between generations. And then I talked to people as well who never actually got to eat in an automat, but they heard stories that were passed down throughout their family.
The term comfort foods was actually coined in the 1960s for foods associated with the security of childhood. And when you think about it, a lot of the comfort foods we enjoy as adults were foods we enjoyed as children.
The automat won people over in the mid-1940s during the war years, with marketing campaigns like less work for mothers and wartime comfort food like mashed potatoes and baked beans. But post-war America craved more than utility. The people wanted quality.
And it also shows how glamour fits in with the dinner table. Every dish guaranteed to stimulate a jaded appetite. The way to the heart of the most stubborn bachelor is through his tum-tum.
The original automats that came from Europe, those relied on a dumbwaiter system. You would order your food, and then there would be a kitchen downstairs where they would make the food for you, and then they would bring it up to you on a dumbwaiter pulley kind of system, like an elevator operated from the basement.
Unfortunately for Horn and Hardart, the automat's machinery was slow and inefficient.
Come on, Mushy. Hey, let's go, Sobby.
And complaints about the automat's food quality began flooding in.
The food was pre-made, it was ready to go. For a long time, it was fresh. That became a problem in its later years when you didn't have enough foot traffic. You had the food sitting there for too long of a time, and then the quality started to decline at that point.
Horn and Hardart had one option: They completely revamped their vending mechanisms. They went from a dumbwaiter system that brought food up from where it was prepped to a rotary system with pockets that held food.
So there were different pockets for hot and cold food. So if you can imagine a pivot, and around the sides of it were these insulated compartments.
The design of the hot pockets meant that pies could stay warm and ice cream could stay cold.
From the outside, all the customer would see would be a glass window, and inside of the window would be an order of macaroni and cheese or turnips or chicken or pie. And once the customer put nickels in the slot next to the window would spring open, the customer would reach in and take out the order of whatever it is they wanted.
Food was dispensed super quickly and at the right temperature. But Horn and Hardart had one more challenge: consistency.
They eliminated those basement kitchens, and they actually began preparing the food off-site in commissaries.
I got to go as a child with my dad and my sister to where they made the food. It was sort of a gigantic kitchen or a food factory. And then the conveyor belts would take the pies when they came through the oven, and different employees would do different steps of the cooking process. So it was like an assembly line, like a scientific, clean place where this wonderful food was coming out.
They were preparing so much food all at the same time in one place, and then sending it out to many different places. This was revolutionary.
Tasting and testing food was a part of the Horn and Hardart quality control in the commissaries.
This was a daily ritual of the company where the executives would sit around a table, they'd invite a few guests, and they would taste the food that was from the commissary to make sure that it tasted right. And once they approved it, then it could be sent out all over the rest of the city.
It was the mid-1950s, and Horn and Hardart was staying afloat, a stickler for quality and constant innovation.
Yeah, I think it's very challenging to last for so long, like 100 years. We see only few companies can really weather the storms, like a GE or an IBM and so forth. It takes a lot of resilience because there's so many challenges for a company along the way, and it takes a willingness to change.
Decades later, enter the cloud kitchen. And while it's relatively new, the business model is facing similar challenges. And its effects are tenfold because Tiffin Labs is a cloud kitchen with no physical store.
The customer is really focused on convenience, but they also want quality. At the end of the day, they want a meal that surprise and delight. And if it's not there, for someone who doesn't have a touch point where I can directly touch them, it can be an easy walk away for that customer.
Tiffin Labs needs to maintain quality, consistency, and novelty in order to retain customers who have a huge range of options to choose from. And all with competition nipping at their heels.
I think part of the issue is that the barriers to entry are still relatively low. As the barriers come down, competition goes up, and it becomes even more challenging to stand out.
In Asia alone, first movers, Rebel Foods, are grabbing a massive-sized market in India. China's Panda Selected are carving out a piece of the largest market in the world. And in Singapore, there are multiple brands offering delivery food in a click at any given time.
I would say it's almost becoming like fashion. No one sews their own clothes anymore, but we talk about clothes and we think about clothes and we show off what we're wearing and we look for new ideas more than we ever have before. And I think a similar process is underway with food. And there's much more willingness to try new things than in the past.
Let's bring our editorial microscope into focus on a very significant phenomenon.
In any food business, the basic economics run on a tight balance. Supply of food has to match demand. That's where data analytics becomes useful.
I think any kind of analytics on what people are eating and what preferences are in real time is going to be a game changer.
So on the demand front, as soon as you have data, you can cater to the needs of those people. You know what they want, and when and how and whatever they want to eat. So that is great to maximize your marketing efforts.
I love data analytics because it's a way of making sense of the world around us.
Tiara is Tiffin Labs' data analytics expert.
When I first started, analytics was in very traditional industry. I didn't think I could use data analytics for food.
Some of the most interesting insights from Tiffin Labs banks on data analysis.
Salads is very popular in Singapore, especially in the CBD area. We saw that the biggest demand for fried chicken was in the Upper Bukit Timah area and the Tampines area. Fried chicken is something that they typically order on weekends when they want to treat themselves. Salad was really a weekday meal for lunch. So we noticed that females are doing more of the ordering. But then you flip it around on the weekends, the guys are doing the ordering, and they were also spending more.
That's extremely valuable data. And knowing, all of the things you can get from a smartphone, time of day, location, once you aggregate that, it can give you some very powerful insights.
We realized that people were really looking for comfort food, and the ultimate comfort food to them was fried chicken. We have both Western and Asian cuisines. So this was really how we came up with one of our brands, Fat Fingers, which is the Korean fusion brands. So taking the normal Korean fried chicken, but giving this Westernized twist to it so that it can cater to both pockets of the demographics.
Once the data reveals what the nation is craving, resident Tiffin Labs research and development chef Terrence Chua gets cracking.
I would never have thought in my career to use data to create cuisines or concepts. The marketing passed me a concept of doing American Korean fried chicken. So I took that concept and sourced out different kinds of ingredients that would fit that concept. And with that, I created a menu. We do so much R&D to ensure that by the time the food reaches the customer, it is 100% there.
Data analytics is disrupting the way Tiffin Labs does business.
Only a few months ago that it kind of sparked that virtual restaurants could work, because I started my career in brick and mortar restaurants. Data is a game changer for the R&D chefs because it streamlines and focuses our concept.
When I was younger, I don't think a concept such as a virtual brand is possible. We're just so used to going to the store to getting our food and dining out with a family. But I think as we move now more to a more digital world, the way that we consume food and look for food is completely different. And this is really where a virtual brand makes a lot of sense.
1960s America, the era of great inflation. The cost of everything was increasing.
They needed to raise the cup of coffee from a nickel to 10 cents, which is something that they avoided doing for so many years. But at a certain point, it became unavoidable. It wasn't just about the price increasing, but it was about the times changing. It was sort of about the world changing, and the automat represented the old world and a much simpler time.
By this time, fast food burger chains had taken over the city.
The automats were fast. McDonald's was faster. The whole fast food culture of McDonald's and Burger King militates against that kind of languorous expenditure of time spent within the space itself.
The automat technology, by the 1960s, it wasn't anymore the revolutionary turn of the century kind of experience that it once was. It was becoming old-fashioned.
As America expanded into the suburbs, fast food chains quickly followed suit.
People were drawn to McDonald's, Burger King, certainly because of marketing.
And now Burger King introduces the bacon.
Those corporations marketed on a national level. The automats never did that because they never expanded nationally.
Aren't you hungry for Burger King now?
Aren't you hungry for the new bacon double cheeseburger now?
This was terrible for their business. They were depending on the foot traffic, and they had high rents to pay. And they had many, many locations. And also, people's tastes were changing, the types of food that they wanted to eat. People wanted fast food that was really basic.
Fast food chains also had one more advantage over Horn and Hardart. When the automobile industry exploded, McDonald's and Burger King were the first to offer drive-through lanes.
Burger King?
Yeah, this is Burger King.
Would you deliver a chef salad?
For you? Absolutely.
Part of why there still isn't a Horn and Hardart today is that they didn't do a good job of forecasting what was ahead and staying ahead. I think they took their success for granted.
Horn and Hardart had failed to innovate. Industrialization had caused a shift in the food industry. Just like how Henry Ford revolutionized car production with the assembly line, the McDonald brothers created the Speedy system, where experienced cooks were replaced by many unskilled workers who did one small, specific step in the food preparation process. Wages remained low, keeping food costs down, and Americans lapped up the fast food chains. Soon, money laundering scandals began to taint the automat's reputation.
It was no longer a family business. It really no longer was the restaurant that it was. It was a company with very high morals.
The whole chain collapsed. Suddenly one day they're gone. The restaurant business has always been a very risky business. It has had a very high failure rate, always.
So many different things caught up with them. But it was a pretty long run that they had. It was amazing when you think of it, and how these, restaurants are a competitive business.
80 years after they opened, Horn and Hardart declared bankruptcy. But it wasn't all over for the company that invented the automat in America. They had one ace left up their sleeve.
They were trying to leverage their real estate. They were in really dire straits, and they didn't have much of a choice. It wasn't so much of a secret weapon as it was a final attempt.
Land once occupied by the automat had a value of $7.5 million in 1973.
They did franchises with some newer restaurants, Burger King, for example. They bought shares in Burger King stock. Apparently, they considered buying the company of Burger King.
By 1991, almost a century after it opened, most automat locations were leased out to Burger King.
I have been reading about the automat for around 10 years now. I love the automat for what it represents and always will represent, even though it's gone. It was a brilliant idea. It really was.
Singapore's virtual restaurant Tiffin Labs is making waves for disrupting the food delivery industry.
We've been moving very fast. What we're doing is groundbreaking in a lot of ways.
For a company born out of a small country, Tiffin Labs has big ambitions.
We're already focused on building a network of kitchens that is global in nature, that really takes into account everything from our supply chain to R&D to data analytics to operations to execution.
One of the biggest challenges for us in terms of building a global F&B brand is no two countries are the same. The taste palettes between Singapore, New York, and London are definitely different. Even though we have a menu and recipe built out, there is always a degree of localization to meet the needs of the local taste palettes.
Although the recipes are slightly tweaked, imagine the idea of ordering your favorite chicken rice made in Singapore, but while overseas.
Yeah, because it's my favorite, and like for 4 years, I don't think I can take it.
For sure, I would order the chicken rice if I was stuck in France, maybe once a month.
I love my laksa, kway teow, chicken rice. I would crave and I'd order it, yeah.
Yeah. Are you joking? Of course. Finding chicken rice when you're in like North America is like, oh my God, it's the greatest thing since sliced bread.
Yes, if the prices were similar to Singapore. Otherwise, I would order pepper crab or chili crab.
Not only is Tiffin Labs exporting Singapore's local delicacies, but just like the Automat, Tiffin Labs is also using real estate to get a leg up over competitors.
We're partnering with real estate aggregators around the world with underutilized kitchen space. So I'm not sure real estate is our secret weapon, but it's an avenue for us to expand and grow.
Instead of building new kitchens, Tiffin Labs is renting existing kitchens in restaurants and catering firms, giving them access to thousands of kitchens by 2025, gaining them a foothold in over 30 countries, from San Francisco to Sydney. That's how they've scaled faster than any cloud kitchen and are planning to stay ahead of the competition. With Tiffin Labs poised to disrupt the restaurant industry not just locally, but globally as well, will this spell the end of the traditional restaurant?
We're going to see a lot of innovation there. And so I would say, if anything, this is going to drive better experiences in the restaurant, because we may be asking restaurants to do fewer things, fewer occasions. We're not all going to shut ourselves up in our homes. We're just going to have more options.
Humans are social creatures. We love being around other people. We also have to eat. It's one of those things we have to do every day, multiple times per day. And so we've kind of evolved over time to be like, listen, we have to do this chore. You want to do it together, right? You have to eat, I have to eat. How about we get together and eat? It's part of our society. It's part of being human, getting together and eating.
Dining out has gone from restaurants reserved for just the wealthy to the fuss-free convenience of the Automat. Today, delivery-only cloud kitchens are setting a radical overhaul to the restaurant industry. But whatever gastronomical trend disruptions, one thing's for sure. You're probably not going to have to wait very long for your order. It looks like milk, foams like milk, and sometimes even tastes like milk. Yummy.
That's some pure milk. Maybe not.
Ah! Soya. It tastes a bit of soya.
Oat?
Yeah, it tastes like oatmeal, actually. So I would guess that this is oat milk.
Okay, this is definitely really off. It tastes like a vegetable.
But I think I prefer this.
That's a pea.
Really?
Today, the creamy white liquid that we pour over our cereal, in our coffee, and down our throats doesn't necessarily have to come from a mammal. In fact, the notion of milking plants is not new. The earliest written mention of almond milk appeared in a Baghdadi cookbook from 1226. And the humble soybean, known as the cow of China, has been a main source of protein for the Chinese since the 11th century. But it would take a plucky Hong Konger to start a renaissance of interest in soy milk in the East.
The particular formulation that Dr. Lowe invented 80 years ago, we are still selling as is.
I don't think there's anyone I know who has not drank a Vitasoy product.
In the last decade or so, the wellness era ushered in an extra woke generation that's turning away from traditional dairy and diving headfirst into a world of alternative milks. oats, almonds, rice, quinoa, pea. Somewhere, a health food company is milking the $12 billion plant milk market. In Britain, one homegrown startup with a unique proposition has risen to the top of the alternative milk space.
Nothing in our drinks and our foods that you don't find in your store cupboard. There's nothing you can't pronounce, nothing you can't spell.
Plant-based is taking off everywhere, and from our portfolio of about 20 drinks, there is a suitable portfolio and assortment for every single country.
It's a taste that's synonymous with breakfast throughout Asia. The creamy, beany, foamy goodness of soy milk. Produced by soaking and grinding a yellow bean, boiling the mixture, and filtering out remaining particulates.
For centuries, the soybean has been cultivated and used for food by people in the Orient.
Native to Manchuria, the soybean has been cultivated by the Chinese since about 3,000 years ago as a cheap source of protein that yielded much more by acreage than milk, eggs, or meat. But the bean's tough and bitter taste, along with the enzyme trypsin, made entire soybeans largely indigestible. So generations that followed have learned to process the bean into soy sauce, tofu, and soy milk. The earliest record of soybean milk sits on a stone slab from the Second Imperial Dynasty, the Eastern Han in China. Its popularity grew during the Qing Dynasty, apparently due to the discovery that gently heating the liquid for at least 90 minutes made it more palatable among lactose-intolerant adults. By the 18th century, street vendors were hawking fresh hot soy milk, or doujiang, as a breakfast food. Consumption of soy milk had spread to England by the 14th century, and in 1908, a Chinese gentleman, Li Yuyi, established the Usine de la Caseo Sojan, the world's first soy dairy, in the suburbs of Paris. By 1929, 2 Shanghai factories were selling over 1,000 bottles a day, and another in Beijing was almost as productive itself. But it would be this name that most of Asia associates with soy milk today.
I don't think there's anyone I know who has not drank a Vitasoy product.
Here's Vitasoy's sustainability director, Simeon Chang, with the story of how it all began. The year was 1939. World War II had sent refugees fleeing China for next-door Hong Kong. And a 27-year-old business graduate by the name of Lo Kui-seong wanted to help.
Our founder, Dr. Lo, was volunteering, so he was visiting the refugees and bringing daily supplies. He noticed that their health wasn't in good shape and they were suffering from malnutrition. Dr. Lo remembered a lecture he attended in Shanghai. The lecturer was telling him about how soy is really the cow of China, how soy can replace the more dairy-based diet. So he started teaching the refugees how to make soybean milk themselves. He noticed very quickly that there is an improvement in health condition. That made him realize that maybe that's the solution for Hong Kong at the time.
In 1939, Dr. Lo and 4 friends formed the Hong Kong Soybean Products Company and named their product Vitamilk. But even amongst the Chinese, who were no strangers to the soybean, the strong, beany flavor of Vitamilk took some getting used to. Lo began working with experts on methods for improving taste and production, homogenizing coconut oil into the soy milk to give it a richer flavor.
I still remember it the first time I tried. I asked the soy milk together with the cereal just to try, and I was really impressed by the way it tasted. The particular formulation that Dr. Lo invented 80 years ago, we are still selling as is.
Roberto Guidetti is current CEO of the 80-year-old legacy brand. And Vitasoy's founding purpose is a big reason the Italian was drawn to the company.
I was working for a different company before Vitasoy, and I was surprised by the fact in some of these restaurants that we were visiting, on every table there was this beverage in a glass bottle. And so I asked my colleagues, what is this brand? And then they explained to me the history, and I felt, wow, this seems to be a very unique proposition and an idea of providing a healthy product, but also providing a product that in a way it is produced is not a burden to the environment.
By mid-1941, Vitamilk sales had risen to 1,000 bottles a day. But when the war came to Hong Kong, the company had to shut operations. In 1945, with peace restored, Low borrowed 50,000 Hong Kong dollars and brought Vitamilk back to production. In a few years, he learned to sterilize and package the soy milk in soft drink bottles instead of the standard half-pint milk bottles, giving it a 6 months shelf life. The product was rebranded to Vitasoy in 1953, the first beverage of its kind in the world. At this time in the West, plant milk was still relatively unknown outside the circles of vegetarians, hippies, and the odd eccentric like Henry Ford, yes, of the car company, who was an early soy evangelist.
Amongst the thousands of products made from hemp, one of the most extraordinary is Henry Ford's plastic car. Built in 1941, it contained cellulose fibers derived from hemp, sisal, and wheat straw.
In 1956, Leslie Cross, vice president of the British Vegan Society, a nascent group of animal rights activists, established the Plant Milk Society, which became the first company in the Western world to make soya milk widely available. In 1977, a small startup in Boulder, Colorado, began manufacturing soy milk. Silk will go on to become one of the largest selling plant-based milk producers in the US. Similarly, in 1980 Belgium, Alpro was founded, quickly becoming Europe's leading soy producer. Due to pressure from the dairy industry, producers were not allowed to call their product soya milk, instead having to term it liquid food of plant origin, and later, soya plant milk. A string of court victories by rich products in Buffalo, New York, between 1949 and 1974 finally established non-dairy milks and products as a new and distinct food, rather than inferior and illegal knockoffs. But the US cattle milk industry has never stopped challenging its plant-based competitors' right to use the word milk. And EU law prevents dairy alternatives from using the word if it isn't produced by a lactating mammal. While soy milk was drunk by millions of people in Asia almost every day, over on the other side of the globe, it was a fringe product that sat on frosty health food aisles in Western supermarkets. That was until the dawn of the new millennium. In 2005, two South Londoners were thinking of getting into the health foods ring. But it was breakfast cereals, not milk, that was on their minds.
I'm Camilla Barnard. I'm co-founder and brand director of Root Health.
I'm Nicholas Barnard, or Nick Barnard, and I'm co-founder with Camilla.
Other than that, what are you to each other?
We are married. We remain married after 16 years of Root Health.
Nick and Camilla, young parents at the time, were struggling to find the right foods to feed their kids.
I mean, I've always loved food, and I think we were just really disappointed with what was available. And cereal packets sit on the table, so you read the ingredient. And I think in doing that, especially in a sort of slightly zombie exhaustion state, I actually read them and realized what low quality a lot of them were.
The couple decided that they were going to create a really great muesli with all natural, all organic ingredients, right there in their own kitchen.
And at the time, most mueslis were 7, 8, 9 ingredients. So when you go to 25, 26, you're really creating an explosion of flavor.
But it was hard work.
And we chopped and prepared that muesli in this kitchen at this table. and started to hand selling it round the neighborhood.
4,000 pounds, a few aprons, and the back of the envelope business plan later, the Barnards were peddling their muesli around the neighborhood and to the local health food stores. But their health food startup soon hit a major roadblock.
For the first 2 years, we weren't totally invested in our lives and in our finances in the company. Where the risk came was when we borrowed money on the basis of the ownership of our house and started to employ people. That was a moment of great excitement and determination that then ran straight into the headwinds of the Lehman Brothers collapse.
Worst timing.
Where organic was, shamed as being luxurious and expensive. Retailers became risk averse.
But by 2010, the economy did bounce back, and so did people's appetite for organic foods. And as they were doling out their cereals at sampling sessions, Nick and Camilla noticed another opportunity.
I was finding that more people were asking for something other than milk, because we usually offer milk. Every tasting, there'd be somebody. And at the time, there were options that weren't milk, but they tended to taste pretty rubbish, quite gritty. The ingredients were awful.
So that then coincided with a gentleman who was very powerful in the breakfast cereal industry, came to visit us in the office, and he made a throwaway remark. Root Health is a great brand. You understand nuts, grains, and seeds. You could do a drink. Ping, something went off inside a light bulb, which of course is ridiculous because we all knew we could do it, but this was the trigger.
In the 1960s, soy milk, or rather Vitasoy, was making its rounds in Hong Kong. In 1968, Time magazine ran an article calling it the new soft drink craze of the British Crown Colony. But remaining on the island was never in the plans for founder K.S. Lowe.
And the idea to start the company was start the company in Hong Kong, but the vision had always been to do this in the context of Hong Kong and beyond Hong Kong, for China and beyond.
In the mid-70s, two innovations allowed Vitasoy products to make their leap overseas. The first was Tetra Brick packaging, constructed of 7 layers of paper and plastic-coated material, making them much lighter than glass. And the second was UHT, ultra-high temperature technology, heating the soy milk above 135 degrees Celsius for a few seconds to kill many bacterial endospores and turning it into long shelf life product.
I think Vitasoy are actually the first company definitely in Hong Kong, if not that part of the world, to bring in and partner with Tetra Pak. But giving the product that sort of 6, 9, 12-month shelf life obviously started to open up a number of doors where it was possible to start to freight the products around the world.
Exports of Vitasoy were going to over 20 countries by the early 1980s. In 1981, Vitasoy became the first Asian soy milk to be imported to North America. But it would be the enormous demand across the border in mainland China where Vitasoy kicked growth into high gear.
Towards the beginning of the 90s, the company, leveraging the expertise that we had in Hong Kong, we were able at the beginning to have a successful establishment of the business in the south. But when you go into central China and you go into eastern China, we had to develop a different model. And in the case of Wuhan, we developed a model that started from the eating and drinking, restaurants, on-premise business, offering basically our product together with food. The case of Shanghai, the big trigger for the expansion was starting our tea business.
Today, Vitasoy is a leading player in China's soy milk market, valued at $1.3 billion in 2018. Besides exporting to 40 markets internationally, it had started production in Australia and New Zealand and took over a tofu business in Singapore, helmed by Managing Director Chris Marchand.
I was a business manager I was selling milk basically into the supermarkets. To be honest, the Vitasoy brand just resonated very strongly with me. The sustainability angle has always been something that I'm very passionate about. We make many, many different kinds of tofu, which was a very eye-opener for an Australian coming over to Singapore. You know, you talk to friends in Singapore, they're surprised that there's someone who looks like me who's making tofu. It takes a lot of water to make tofu, so we've really been able to reduce the amount of water that we do to make a kilo of tofu, and just keep driving those kind of agendas. Packaging is a big one, so it can either be very easily recycled or doesn't have a very big impact back into the environment. I think really it was always the vision of Vitasoy to really be this plant-based business, and while yes, there is a very heavy focus on the liquid side of it, being able to complement that with the food side, I think was always there.
Despite its international success, Vitasoy was still only dabbling in the world of soy, until CEO Roberto Guidetti saw an opportunity.
Over the last couple of decades, the attention to health and attention to well-being has definitely increased all over the world. It was 2013, so we had to basically, as a company, decide, is this something that is meaningful to us? Should we open and develop a plant-based portfolio as opposed to continue to grow soy? And we made the decision to then do that. And that's because of that decision that happened in 2013 that now as a result, we not only have almond in our portfolio, but we have rice, we have oat, we have coconut. And these are options which are sold with different formulations across different markets.
That same year, a pair of South Londoners with a cereal and snack company called Rude Health were also on the cusp of launching a line of non-dairy milks. But just like everything else the Barnards wanted to make, finding the right ingredients, as well as the people who were willing to make non-dairy milk the way they wanted it, proved to be a challenge.
There's nothing in our drinks and our foods that you don't find in your store cupboard. There's nothing you can't pronounce, nothing you can't spell. We work with, as I say, predominantly family-owned and family startup businesses that are good at sourcing with us. But what we do is we push them in the right direction. So we say, okay, you're going to have hazelnuts. We want hazelnuts from Piedmont to the Tondo Gentile hazelnuts.
The best hazelnuts in the world. What happens is we might talk to 10 different producers, but because we want this ingredient from that particular place, we always end up with one producer who can give us the ingredients we want and do the methods we want, and it's okay with the ridiculous requirements. There's a fine line between coercion and inspiration.
Inspiring, yes, coercion inspiring individuals to make the right decision.
In 2013, when Rude Health launched 3 flavors of plant milks, oat, brown rice, and, almost as an afterthought, almond, they happened to get the timing right. Buoyed by a trend of fit young Instagrammers sharing health foods all over social media, Rude Health's almond drink became the company's best-selling item in any category.
We got in there at exactly the right time. We were probably the first brand in the UK that was a lifestyle dairy-free drinks brand rather than a needs state dairy-free drinks brand.
In the plant milk category, publicity is everything. Look no further than a little oat milk brand known as Oatly. Crafted in the 1990s by Swedish food scientist Rikard Oste, Oatly went from a little-known Swedish brand to the world's largest-selling oat milk producer with the help of some attention-grabbing ad campaigns. Having spent years making great food in dour packaging, the Rude Health team realized that their communications needed some changing up.
Dairy alternative drinks is a really relatively new category, and a lot of shoppers come into it completely blind, so not really knowing what they're looking for, either from a brand or also in terms of flavor or functionality. So these were our first dairy-free drinks that we launched with, brown rice, almond, and oat drink. So we very quickly definitely wanted to elevate the packaging so that it's brighter, bolder, we really bring out color. The color is totally different. It pops, it's vibrant. Because our packs are so bright, we stand out in a sea of sameness. Then there's also messaging on pack, but it's also really important that they know that our almond drink is made with only natural ingredients. Or if they pick up our oat drink, it's really important that they know that our oat drink is actually gluten-free, which a lot of oat drinks aren't.
So here we are again this year at the Rude Health World Bulk Snorkeling Championship.
We put a huge emphasis on experiential and event marketing, so we think it's really important to actually get out face-to-face with the people who buy our brand or who could buy our brand and get our drinks into their hands.
But like dairy, the plant-based movement isn't without its own controversies, which these pioneers will soon find out. Drinking milk as we know it is a recent phenomenon. Only in the 20th century, with the introduction of mandatory pasteurization, where milk is heated to kill off any bacteria, did the drink become safe enough for most people. The First World War pushed the Brits at a time when food was limited and child malnutrition rife to start consuming milk as the original superfood.
Dairy products of all kinds to supply nutrition needs of United States civilians, United States servicemen, and our allies.
In the US, the Attlee and Truman governments both passed measures to ensure milk was available free with school meals. And more recently, the Got Milk campaign sent a loud and clear message. If you wanted your children to grow up big and strong, they needed to be drinking milk. Most of us are, in fact, born milk drinkers. Babies' guts produce the enzyme lactase, which breaks down lactose, the sugar in breast milk and cow's milk, into the simpler sugars. But for the majority of humans, production of the enzyme lactase plummets after weaning. It is the reason that worldwide, more than 2/3 of all adults are considered lactose intolerant, and a glass of the white stuff can induce bloating, stomach pains, and diarrhea. The allure of cow's milk began its decline in the 70s. In 1975, the average American consumed around 130 liters of milk per year. In 2017, it was just 66 liters. 1,000 dairy farms in the UK closed between 2013 and 2016. Milk's reputation as a healthy food is also under threat from anxieties about bovine antibiotics, animal cruelty, and the industry's environmental impact. Sometime in the early 2000s, the idea of clean eating became popular in the US, spreading contagiously across social media from the Western world to Asia.
This trend towards healthier foods, it's when organic foods became more and more desired across Asia because of rising middle classes, more concerned parents, people that were traveling abroad. That would have happened around 10 to 15 years ago, that you started seeing organic products coming on shelf. But in the last 5 years, there's been this huge rise in what I call the barista coffee culture. Coffee shops are the hottest thing going in Asia, even from an investment point of view. And obviously the rise of Starbucks over the last 5 to 10 years has played a part in people knowing and being exposed to things like almond milk. And then in the last couple of years, oat milk. And then finally, of course, especially in the last 18 months, the rising environmentalism movement, flexitarianism. We were starting to see ethical brands. We were starting to see conscious consumerism.
In 2013, Vitasoy made the strategic decision to join the wider plant-based revolution, dedicating its massive R&D departments to opening new frontiers.
I had basically personally already stopped animal liquid dairy milk before joining the company for health reasons, and I found that to be very inspiring. There was a real person who had started the company with a view to achieve a certain outcome, and that this, despite so many years, this pioneering idea, it was now ripe for mainstream.
In addition to its classic range of soy milk, Vitasoy introduced almond, coconut, and oat. It enriched the nutritional benefits in its different products with added calcium, vitamin D, dietary fiber, and other essential micronutrients. Produced a low-sugar range of drinks and a barista range to serve the health-conscious coffee-goers.
Anytime that you're opening a new front, is something that requires a longer lead time than you think. I mean, we were talking before about our entry into the almond segment. You can obtain a milk that has this profile in many different ways. You can actually use real almonds, raw almonds, almond paste. You can use oils, right? So these are a number of things that you don't necessarily know at the beginning, but then through maybe 2 to 3 iterations, the company on a base of expertise you already have becomes ever more competent. But then in addition to that, the fact that the company started expanding outside of its original home region gave us new insights about how to formulate this product. So for example, in Australia, a number of people who were trying the original formulation gave feedback that they would have liked the color to be different, they would have liked the texture to be different, they would have liked the taste to be a bit less green and to be a bit more neutral, right? And so the company obviously learned how to adjust, and that was a significant success.
Lucy knew switching to planet-friendly oat milk would make her feel good. She just didn't expect that.
Vitasoy has essentially 2 markets that it's going for. What they did very cleverly, I think, is that they created an entirely different range, which they launched in Australia. And that one is organic, it is more neutral, and it has almond, oat, and soy as well. It's done really well, so well that they've now brought it to the rest of the region.
More than just nourish us with protein and calcium. It's kinder to the planet too. Vitasoy, let's grow a better world.
The 80-year-old soy giant is also leveraging its huge geographic advantage to crack nascent markets in the region and secure its spot as the Asian leader of plant milk.
We have found often that the conversation about this particular movement tends to be a bit Western-centric. For some of us, or most of us who are part of this, we feel that Asia is actually an incredibly important point to be made, because if we're looking at population trends, and if we're looking at where the solutions are actually going to be needed the most, is Asia.
2016, a decade after the Barnards made their first foray into healthy foods, Rude Health is now sitting on a line of alternative milks, everything from pea to tiger nut.
Now, in terms of how crowded the market is, I would say that it's getting crowded and crowded. I would say that there is the biggest strongholds dominate. In almond breeds and silk is around 50% of the market in North America. So they have a loyal consumer base, some of them, and it is difficult to compete with them. So we can see that there are a lot of smaller brands, or nimble or gaining ground. We see players like, for example, Oatly, which has built this very strong brand personality around the environment. You know, what we should all be swapping to contribute to the environment in a positive way. Rude Health is one of those players that has positioned itself very well into the health and wellness space, not only because it's organic, and organic obviously is that added sustainability angle as well to the product.
That year, Rude Health opened its first cafe, which served as a creative space to showcase their products.
I think one day the office was too big for the amount of staff that work for Rude Health, so
someone had the idea, let's open a cafe, and then 2 weeks later, a wall was built.
So literally behind this wall is the office.
That's the office. Yeah, and voila, we've got a cafe.
That's innovation executive Ferg, who used to be the cafe's chef and manager.
We obviously try and use our products in our kind of ever-changing daily menu. So we use a lot of our drinks in our hot dishes, for example, curries. Our cashew nut drink is brilliant in a curry, and so is our coconut drink, where it's kind of a living, breathing opportunity for us to showcase our products and get direct feedback from customers.
And you'll be surprised to learn that the cafe would serve up good old dairy as well.
Yeah, we do sell dairy. Our kind of ethos is nourishment and joy and choice. So we don't say, no, we don't serve that, because as long as it's quality ingredients, then we serve it here.
But in 2017, the company's message of inclusion and celebration of food got them into trouble with some of their customers.
We put up a post on Instagram, and it was talking about quality across the board. So if you were to choose dairy alternatives, you should choose Root Health. Then if you also were to choose dairy, you should go for really high quality dairy.
The post incensed the vegan community and triggered a boycott.
We had no idea about the fallout because actually we'd used that exact post before. And we'd been talking about dairy for years. What was a real surprise to us, a real shock to us, was this assumption that if we make dairy-free drinks, we must be against dairy, which just had not crossed our minds. Why do you have to be against one thing to do another thing?
The Root Health team quickly reworked their messaging, distancing themselves from the political and prescriptiveness of the category, and instead focusing on taste.
So we've got 3 creatives going out for our advertising campaign. So for example, one of the posters says, take a stand against bland. So take a stand is really big, which plays on how the category is quite political and usually pulls on those kind of heartstrings, but really we're telling people to take a stand against bland. Another one says, you can go dairy-free without going flavor-free. We like to offer choice and quality and versatility, and really let people make their own decisions about what they eat or drink at the end of the day.
In case you haven't heard, there's a worldwide craze for non-dairy milk. In December 2018, Brooklyn cafes and grocery stores were sent into crisis mode as the supply of Oatly, the oat drink that devotees say makes for a creamier, tastier latte than even cow's milk, runs dry. Turns out Brooklynites have been chugging the oat drink faster than its Swedish manufacturer could make it. And it's an utter disaster. One Amazon seller is even charging $200 for a 12-pack of the Barista blend, shipping not included. Today, even high street coffee shops like Starbucks has soy, coconut, almond, and oat milk at the ready for your morning coffee. Alternative milk is a market expected to be worth $21.5 billion in 2024.
For a start, I am lactose intolerant, so I don't really take dairy milk.
There are times that I'm having this kind of stomach discomfort if I'll be taking a lot of dairy products.
So I do drink non-dairy milk, preferably oat milk, in my coffee every morning without fail.
Kampai!
What we noticed is that the younger generations seem to be more likely to take it up. Looking just at the Asia Pacific region, particularly females aged 25 to 34. So grain-based milk, we see a compound annual growth rate of 8.37% up to 2025. So this is from a small base compared with, say, traditional milk. But those sort of growth rates, rice-based is 9.58%, seed-based 5.18%, nut milk 4.85%. Those sort of growth rates say to me that this is not a fad, that this is going to grow from a small base, grow quite substantially, certainly during the course of this decade, I imagine into the next one as well.
With studies showing that vegetarianism and veganism as the single most effective way to reduce one's own environmental footprint, the meteoric rise of milk with a Y was partly down to its reputation for being friendly on the planet. But around 2015, plant milk, specifically almond, was embroiled in an environmental scandal when a Mother Jones article pointed out that it takes 23 gallons of water to produce a single gallon of almond milk. While this is still lower than 30 gallons of water for cow's milk, the fact that 80% of the world's almonds are produced in drought-ravaged California still came as a shock to the public. This time, London-based alternative milk startup Rude Health managed to sidestep any criticism, thanks to a far-sighted business decision made early on.
Interesting thing with the almonds, part of the reason it was a really great sort of product for us was because the almonds were sourced in Sicily, which is somewhere that's grown almonds for thousands of years. They've got a particular type of almond that has a really intense flavour, and the farming system there, it works perfectly. It's a completely sustainable crop. They have enough rain, so it's not reducing the water table, it's not damaging the bees, whereas we were really aware, because we're a bit obsessive, that there was a huge problem even 8-10 years ago with the way almonds are produced in California. It's on an enormous scale, and it's a monoculture, and it's damaging to the environment, the water table, the bees, the people who are farming it. Everything is extractive. So for us, it was a huge win to be able to find an almond drink that we were happy with the sourcing of, as well as the flavour of. It made it was more expensive, but it's bestseller, so it still worked. People were prepared to pay.
By 2013, Rude Health was exporting its sustainable plant milk all over the world, from the Netherlands, Costa Rica, Portugal, Russia, parts of the Middle East, Singapore, and Hong Kong. Heading its global expansion is Caroline Odener.
Plant-based is taking off everywhere. There is not a single market where this is not a growing trend. And from our portfolio, about 20 drinks, there is a suitable portfolio and assortment for every single country. Plus that we do a lot of inspirational recipe videos to explain consumers how they can use our drinks, for example. We created an e-magazine with recipes from all over the world, and that goes from sushi rolls to waffles to spring rolls from Vietnam to dumplings from China.
Britain's #1 organic plant milk brand is also setting its sights on the massive consumer market of China.
鲈的健康食本有限公司. So this is our Chinese name. Because of the changing customer behavior in China, they cannot travel during the pandemic, and they are more health cautious, and so that's why they want more premium brand, Western brand, to be selling in Alibaba.
A year after being approached by Alibaba, Rude Health began trading on its subsidiary platform, Tmall Global, at the start of 2021, leveraging China's massive e-commerce marketplace to bypass food import regulations and paperwork.
这个是 Rude Health， 这是英国很有名的有机植物奶啊。它在2005年，然后去。
In March 2021, Rude Health began its own live streaming events, a platform on which 30% of China's population watch influencers push various products.
And they will even try the product in front of the camera and tell about their feelings, and also they would suggest some usage occasion as well. Chinese consumer, you can think of, they are very open-minded and adventurous. They try any new things. They're happy with all the new devices or new method of communication.
3瓶到手只要90六。
The same year, Rude Health received a B Corp certificate after 16 years, formalizing its status as a business that balances people, planet, and profit.
This is not about this is the right grain or the right nut. It's about you have this rainbow, this whole group of different drinks that we make that allow you to express yourself and your meal occasion or your drink occasion accordingly.
With environmental concerns at the center of today's plant milk revolution, international plant milk company Vitasoy has looked hard at going green in the last decade.
I think sustainability is something that is a more mature topic in the Western world, but I think in Asia Pacific is fast becoming mainstream. And so a lot more consumers are talking about it. ESG has become important in attracting not just consumers, but also investment.
Household brand Vitasoy has been using cartons made with FSC certified paper. This means that
in the span of about 5 years, we have reduced over 20% of our energy use and water use in our manufacturing facilities group-wide. We developed an internal sustainable farming guidelines, and we have implemented that guidelines to all our contract farms in Australia and in mainland China. So we have made a conscious effort to trace all our raw materials suppliers back to the origin to make sure that none of our raw materials are associated with deforestation.
In 2018, environmental groups estimated that of the 43,000 tons, or 19 swimming pools worth of drink cartons discarded in Hong Kong's landfills each year, a majority belonged to Vitasoy products. The company responded by recognizing that its product packaging does generate waste when discarded and has been working on a solution to recycle them.
In Hong Kong, we are the biggest importer of the paper carton packaging. So we feel a high responsibility in dealing with this issue. There is one facility in Hong Kong dedicated to recycling used paper cartons. So this facility has only come to become available in recent years. In the past year or two, we have rolled out a project in both education and a program to help to collect more of these cartons back for recycling. So we started going to schools and explain to them the importance of recycling and how the paper cartons can be collected for recycling. And then we also expanded that program to other places like residential complexes, shopping malls, supermarkets, even some petrol stations now have those recycling bins.
Vitasoy, let's grow a better world.
In 2020, Vitasoy joined the top 30 most sustainable companies in the Hang Seng Corporate Sustainability Index. Even as 2020 proves to be a challenging year for all businesses, Vitasoy managed to complete expansion projects in mainland China and Hong Kong, sustain revenue growth in Australia and New Zealand, and expand its operations in Southeast Asia.
And I think we're in a very nice place because of the history that we've had, the family values and the purpose that have come forward. I think it's respecting where you've come from, respecting the years and years and years that have gone into developing these products. You want to make sure that you stay true to that while being able to evolve, modernize, and continue to look forward as well.
The jury is still out on whether plant milk's popularity is a fad. But if an 80-year-old soy milk brand and Britain's leading health food company tell us anything about innovation, it's that it never gets old.